So, to let people know, it's finally happening. We're finally getting to the JFK assassination.
Boom. Yeah, we're going to talk about, this is going to be a 3-parter, right?
Yeah, I didn't want to, for one thing, I didn't want to just lecture for the full hour of reading from a book. So, yeah, we're splitting it up into 3 parts. We're going to do 20 to 30 minutes in the next 3 episodes. And this episode, I'm going to focus specifically on the shots that killed Kennedy and how it's ridiculously obvious that they did not all come from behind him. But we'll get into the other. So for those of you listening, like, but you didn't talk about how Oswald, blah, blah, blah. We'll get into more of that next week and the week after. But we have other stuff on this episode as well.
Yeah, we're going to talk about, so we're going to talk about your JFK thing. And then we're going to talk about more evidence about Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton is somebody I'm sure you've talked about on Redacted. I've talked about it on my show, Political Vigilante. And we're going to go a little deeper on Fred Hampton, on how he was assassinated. So
this is a big assassination week right here.
It is assassination week. But before we get into that, I mean, let's just talk about how exciting this inauguration is and the new Biden administration. And
oh my God, Eleanor Goldfield called it Operation Peaceful Transition, because DC's just been a fucking military war zone. We walked down there. You can't get anywhere near it. They have literally put up giant metal gates around the entire Capitol / White House area.
Wow. Now, on Inauguration Day, was there any protesters? Were there anybody out there celebrate? I mean, like, what was the...
Now, there was some reports of something between, some like Proud Boy type people and some cops at Union Station, but almost nothing. I mean, I think that the mainstream media was told to keep talking about how there were 25,000 National Guard here to dissuade white supremacist groups and Trump supremacists from coming to DC, and they seem to have succeeded, because I didn't see any. But
hold on, sorry. I am watching, easy Siri. Watching that whole ceremony. I mean, I was like, this is just such what 2020 and now 2021 are going to be. It's just like, yay, Trump's gone, and great. Now Biden is like, and of course he could have signed via executive order Medicare for all, because we are in a crisis. He could have said, executive order, we are in a national crisis because of this pandemic. I am authorizing Medicare for all. But
yep. Section 1881A of the Social Security Act. He could have done it. # force the executive action. And he could still do it. But I don't, I mean, the Democrats love to point to Congress and say they can't do things. We can't do things because of the Republicans and everything. So it's not that they don't have these abilities. It's that they choose not to use them and try to say, oh, we just can't. And Trump kind of proved that a lot of this stuff can be done with executive action. Even if it were to go to the courts and everything, you'd still could probably give people health care for like a year while it worked its way through the courts. I mean,
right. And then how would that look? How are they going to sell that to a bunch of Americans? That's why they will never do it, because it's like, if everyone's already got free health care and they're like, how are they going to sell that? Oh, this health care is awful. All these Americans go, no, it's not. It's great. I love it.
Right.
And, it's better than my old health care, and it's free, and I'm not paying anything, and you're not taking it away. And because that's, once you give free health care, it's really hard to take it away.
It's funny. I want you to join all of the other developed countries, or you kind of like it. You're like, this ain't so bad, Yeah.
Oh wow, maybe socialism isn't such a horrible idea. And the other let's talk about some of the other executive actions. So he's stopping the Keystone XL pipeline, which this is more of the, well, it'll remain to be seen, but this is again more of the charade that the Democrats and the willful, liberal corners of the corporate media, it's like Obama shut down the XL pipeline, and it's like he shut it down but left it open to be reopened. I mean, he didn't really close it, so it's more of just that like performative acts that the Democratic Party likes to take, and then the media goes along and says it's fine. So it's like I'm curious to know the specifics of this pipeline and what else is going to be opened up, because we know Obama and Vice President Biden opened up the Arctic to drilling twice. They laid down more pipelines than anybody else. So
right.
To see.
Well, yeah. And part of it is that, the Keystone was already, Obama shut it down for a minute at the end of he waited till his final, month. So really Biden's just going back with what Obama did. But yeah, it's going to depend on what else Biden does for climate change. I mean, if it's just shutting down the Keystone XL, then that's, nearly nothing. But it also has to do with where we are now. I mean, climate change is making large swaths of the planet unlivable. Oil and gas are collapsing. Exxon says they may never recover from the combination of the fact that people are using less oil with the pandemic. So really, they are... the Democrats like to wait until an industry or a corporation basically no longer owns them. And then they go, we stood up to them. It's like, yeah, you stood up to them as they're collapsing.
Well, yeah, it's again, and this is the fear I said during the whole Democratic primary a year and a half ago. I was like, if Biden gets in, he'll just, undo or put back in place the things Trump got rid of. And then everyone will go back to brunch. So it's like, we're back in the Paris Accord. We shut down the XL pipeline. Oh, wow. That's not enough. That's what the Paris Accord.
You know how important the Paris Accords are? Look at all the countries that have stayed in it. Have they solved climate change? No. They've done fuck all, because the Paris Climate Accords have no teeth. They don't actually, enforce anything. And that's why you had big banks and like oil companies, toasting champagne glasses when it was signed. Yeah. And, Biden said no Green New Deal. He looked in the camera and said, I'm not going to ban fracking. So this is just more, and this will put the dummy liberals. The liberals are the dumbest people. They're dumber than MAGA. Because they will go, yay, we did it. We got rid of big bad Trump. Now we'll go back to brunch. And it's like, oh, yay, you're so stupid. Like the Paris Accord does nothing. We're still having climate collapse. Like there's already people in Florida. Literally, I saw this story that there's some neighborhoods in like Little Havana that are on higher ground that are now being gentrified because the people who have the big beachfront property are like, oh, this is flooding. This is going to be underwater soon. So we're pushing out working class people of color in a neighborhood to take their land. And so Florida's going to be underwater, but Biden, we're in the Paris Accord. Oh, okay. Awesome. It's just like, it's more of these like Democratic half measures that they'll scream as these big wins, and dipshit liberals. Most of them like our generation is pretty stupid with the liberals. Like the liberal Gen Xer are pretty dumb. And the Paris Accord would be more useful if they took it all, printed it out, shredded it, and then stacked the bags on the edge of Florida to stop the water from coming in. I think then it might be useful.
Well, that is actual. Now that I'm on board with. That's a practical use of the Paris Accord.
Yeah.
Print it up and all the idiot countries and liar politicians' names and shred it and put it in plastic bag. Now we're getting somewhere with the
Paris. We're getting somewhere, yeah.
This is the kind of real change I like, Lee. These are the kind of big actions.
Yeah, that's why they call me the idea man. Yeah. A thought leader. We're thought leaders, Graham.
Lee Camp, thought leader. Because the shredding the bag thing is a long-term solution, without a doubt. I mean, that really is the kind of change we're going to see. And of course now, Biden, I'm giving people $2,000 the minute I get in office. Well, now it's $14,000. Well, we're pushing it to March. Well, it might be more like April, but you'll get it.
1,400.
1,400. Yeah, 1,400. And now they're talking about we might not get it until April. And
My favorite of the magically shrinking promises is we're going to get rid of $50,000 of student loan debt. Well, 25,000. Well, 10,000. Well, now I think that I read they're down to just we're stopping interest on student loans for now. Like
again, another thing could be done by executive action. 85% of student loans are federally backed, meaning the federal government, the president could just say, we forgive them, and it's gone. It doesn't need to go to Congress. It doesn't need any sort of budget approval because it's not tax revenue. So it's just gone. And, and it's not going to do that. And then idiot liberals are going to go, yay, we did it. We cut the interest rate on student loans down by 1/3%. So yay, we made everything better. So it'll be, I mean, and then this, okay, so where else do we begin on the idiot plans of
how about the militarism with he's already said he's going to send troops back to Iraq to stop to clamp down on terror in the region. And it's like, who do you think creates the most terror in that region? I think they go by the name U.S. military.
And again, dipshit vote any blue will do liberals will go, yay, better than Trump. So you're in favor of war? You're just anything that's different than what Trump did, you're in favor of it. Like if Biden said now it's time to start, slapping puppies. We like, oh, thank God Trump was letting these puppies run wild. Like they're so dumb. And it's like, I can't fathom how stupid this country is.
Or Biden would come into office with the promise that he's going to stop all puppy slapping. And then he's like, well, you need to you can only use 3 fingers on the slap instead of a full 5. And then, okay, 4 fingers, but you can't go all the way back. You gotta, I mean,
it's just your dominant hand. Like it's got to be the other one, like whatever. Then there's this is the Democrats love doing this. Well, let's sign a deal. So we're going to be nice to Mitch McConnell. When Republicans get in power, they're like, no, we're not working with you. Suck it. We have power now. Eat it. And the Democrats are going to allow Mitch McConnell to filibuster because they need that, because right now they have no excuses. The Democrats have the House, the Senate, and the White House, and there's no excuses. They can pass whatever they want. But they need that, like, oh, Mitch McConnell's gumming up the works again. No, you mean like the first 2 years of Obama when he could have passed all of this stuff and didn't? And then again, dipshit vote any blue will do liberals will believe anything because they're just as stupid as MAGA, if not dumber. MAGA's pretty stupid. I just want to be fair. This show's all about fair. MAGA, you're an idiot. If you're MAGA, you're dumb. And if you're blue MAGA, you're really dumb.
Yeah, blue anon is a real problem.
Blue anon is a real problem. Yeah, QAnon, you've been drinking Kool-Aid because you're probably not gifted intellectually, and then blue MAGA, you've got a college degree from some stupid college, and you live in a city full of liberals, and you've never worked a real day in your life, and you don't know what. And you call them flyover states because you're scared of people, and you're dumb. Anyway, great stuff. America's going to be amazing. I'm excited about the next 4 years. It's so it's amazing to me, and all these believe all people I've seen, like notable comedians and celebrities who 2-3 years ago were all Me Too, believe all women, and are now cheering Joe Biden, believe all women, but not Tara Reid. She doesn't.
Right. So, believe all women except the 15 that have accused Biden of some kind of touching that made them thoroughly uncomfortable. We're not going to believe those women.
Right. Because and the women that accused Bill Clinton, I don't know if we're going to believe them, especially when Bill Clinton's lawyer, Hillary went after those women in the 80s and 90s. So it's real good stuff. Anyway, I'm excited about these next 4 years. I have a lot of faith in America. And that's why I do this show. Oh, the other thing. So 100 million vaccines in 100 days, which I would love to see happen. And they're like, he's going to need to do 1 million vaccines a day. Well, kids, he's already he's been in office 2 days now. So have 2 million vaccines gone out in the last 2 days? I don't know.
Well, what was it? It was like 1.5 or something. I don't know.
All right.
I mean, it's going to take some time. If he is changing anything from the way Trump had things running, it's going to take a day or two to make the switch. But you're right that apparently, according to the people that know more about this than I do, that 100 million is kind of shooting low. That other countries per capita are doing far better than that.
Well, that's not shocking that America is woefully behind. The only thing we're ahead in is like what? Infant mortality, gun shooting, childhood obesity, shitheadedness. Aren't we number one in shitheadedness? I don't know. I haven't checked the news.
I think we are. People in prison, definitely ahead in that. Winning that one. Bombs dropped per minute. That's a good one. BPM. It's BPM.
BPM. Another thing Biden didn't stop doing when he took all office. He didn't stop the bombing.
No, the military machinery pretty much runs as is, no matter who's in the White House. So.
Right. No matter who's in the White House, which is fantastic. So speaking of, how did we get here? How is our government so bad? What happened? How come there's no true visionaries as president? And maybe this ties into the JFK assassination. The guy who said he was going to break up the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the dust. That guy?
Yeah. I think that the moment he was shot was about the time the CIA said, you know what? This is actually our country. This is not whoever you elect into that office.
Yep.
We're going to take it from here. You put whatever figurehead you want up there to say a bunch of shit, but we got it.
And we're going to take out his brother just for thinking about running to be president. Just about being president.
Just for getting close. Just for getting within eye shot of the presidency.
You won California in the primary? Yep. You're going to be in some weird hallway in a hotel. Okay. Thank you.
They were like, because after killing JFK, they were like, we took out people just because they saw somebody who knows something. You think we're not going to take out RFK?
Yeah, I know. It's just like, they almost were like, we killed the president. You think we care about his younger brother who was like attorney general? Like, come on. Like, we'll do whatever we want.
So to dive into this topic, I'm going to spend more on, you mentioned that he said he was going to break up the CIA. There are that and many other reasons as to why JFK had to be killed. I'm going to get into those next week. I figured we'd start with the juicier and grislier details.
Government Secrets, episode 26, official secret number 1. After pre-show banter and current events.
I like whenever the game show voice guy has to pause to think about what it's coming next.
It's just sort of doing it.
Yeah. All right, stick around for, I think, commercials.
Stick around for filling time while I figure out what you're sticking around for. JFK.
I'm going to slow down words to kill time because we're vamping on Government Secrets, brought to you by the CIA and Michael Winslow.
Yeah, and the guy from Police Academy who made a bunch of noises.
The sound effects guy.
Okay, so because I'm not, I know that, we're going to do this over 3 episodes. I know we can't get into every detail of the JFK assassination. It would take fucking years. I'm going mostly off of, this is a great book called JFK and and the Unspeakable. Everybody should check it out. But I'm going to focus on kind of little portions of kind of the things that were most, excuse the pun, mind-blowing to me. And also even if you don't know anything else that happened, you don't know any of the names, outside of JFK or Jackie or something, but you don't really know what happened. If you just know these couple little things, it's impossible to ever go back and say that, oh yeah, it was Oswald, one dude shot from a book depository. That's it. So I'm kind of giving you the pieces that make it just impossible for it to have just been Oswald, although later I'll get into how it wasn't Oswald at all, maybe next week. But for this week, we're going to focus on the fact that pretty much, even if you've never read any of this shit, you never studied it or anything, you know the basics, which is we are told JFK coming down the road with Jackie in the car. Obviously, there's other security and stuff, guys on motorcycles, open roof car, and he is shot, and we're told he's shot from the back multiple times, coming from the book depository. And so that means every shot had to have entered him and entered his head from the back, because they had already passed the book depository.
Okay.
And when I think of this moment, the JFK assassination, I always picture, and don't put it up just yet, Graham, and we're going to put it up in a second, but I always picture the shot of Jackie Onassis climbing onto the back of the car. This is immediately after JFK has been shot, and we're told that she was reaching to help the Secret Service man onto the car to protect her and John F. Kennedy and help. And so it's this famous shot of her, you know, her husband's just been shot, and she's crawling onto the back hood of the car. And I'll get back to that in a second. But so there are if you know anything about bullet wounds or ballistics, if a bullet blows away a large portion of a skull, it's because the bullet came in from the other side. So it comes in the front, it leaves a little bullet hole. You know that from every movie you've ever seen. When a guy gets shot in the front of the head, it doesn't blow up his face. And if you saw that in a movie where a guy shoots a guy and his head explodes, you'd be like, that's not real. That's like laughable. That's like Quentin Tarantino or something. So it makes a bullet hole here. And then if it blows up a large portion, it's out the back, or it could go the other way, coming in from the back and blow out a part in the front. But the front entrance is always a small bullet hole. Or the place where the bullet goes in. Could be in the back, but small bullet hole. But there are so many and just an endless number of witnesses and evidence showing that JFK, immediately after these shots are fired, has lost the back of his head. The back of his head is blown off, which could not happen from shots coming from the back. And this is not like, oh, they found one nurse who said she saw it. And so this is like almost the entirety of the witnesses that initially, like if you find their initial statements before they've been pressured and things like that. So even Jackie Kennedy, this is her immediate description, but it wasn't released to the public until 1995. She sees a bullet hit Governor Connolly, who was sitting in the front seat, and also hit her husband. And then a piece of his skull is coming off, she says. And then she's not saying this part, but her instinctive response, immediately after the fatal shot, was to climb onto the trunk of the car to try and get the piece of his skull that has been blown off. Which makes sense that she's not helping a Secret Service man onto the car, because if the person next to you who you care about has just been shot, you don't immediately just like start looking around for go to help the person. And an instinctive thing, it makes sense, is if she's just seen part of his head fly off, she reached to get that piece of his head. And she basically said that later. But okay, so you can pull up the famous image, and this is the famous shot of her. I don't know how much we can zoom, but it's very clear that, like, if you can see her hand, and I don't know how much people can see her hand, but you can look up the image online. But her hand is not reaching out to this Secret Service man. Her hand is cupping something on the back of the car. She is trying to grab the piece of his skull that has come off and is on the rear of the car. And she says in her statements that weren't released until later. So then she gets back in the seat, and then she says, quote, "I was trying to hold his hair on. From the front, there was nothing," meaning from the front, there was no damage. She says, I suppose there must have been, but she didn't see any damage from the front. But, and this is again her quote, from the back, you could see, you meaning she, were trying to hold his hair on, his skull on. So she's saying the back of his skull is missing. And this fits with other things that happened. 21 nurses and doctors that saw him when he arrived at the hospital said the back rear side of his skull was gone. They and even the main doctor, let's see if I can find the page. But even the main doctor who was there said, initially comes out and says that he was missing the back rear side of his head. Let's see here, 306. So yeah, Dr. Crenshaw is his name, and later he puts out a book about it. He says he noticed a small opening in the throat, which was the bullet. He says it was a bullet entry wound. There was no doubt in my mind. I've seen dozens of them in the emergency room. So it was a bullet entry wound in the front. The right rear of Kennedy's brain was gone. He said it looked like a crater, an empty cavity. All I could see there was a mangled bloody tissue. From the damage I saw, there was no doubt in my mind that the bullet had entered his head through the front. And then 21 fucking witnesses agree that he's missing the back of his head. Now, this is, and in the first press conference. So this is a question from this is the New York Times report of you can pull down the image, Graham. This is the New York Times report of the first press conference by the doctors immediately after Kennedy has been pronounced dead. Question, where was the entrance wound? Perry, one of the other doctors, says there was an entrance wound in the neck. Question, which way was the bullet coming in the neck wound? At him. Perry says it appeared to be coming at him. Question, doctor, describe the entrance wound. You think from the front in the throat. Perry, the wound appeared to be an entrance wound in the front of the throat. Yes, that is correct. So these doctors are then later pressured to say that they did not see Kennedy missing the back of his head, because whoever the people are involved, Secret Service, military, CIA, they know that if it becomes clear that Kennedy was missing the back of his head, then it's impossible for it to have been Oswald. It's impossible for the shooter to have been behind him. And the doctor in 1992, Dr. Crenshaw finally comes forward, and he admits that he was pressured to change his story and say that it wasn't an entrance wound and that the back of the head was gone. And he also says that I knew that if these people were willing to kill a president, that they wouldn't have a problem killing a doctor. So a lot of people didn't come forward until the 90s because they really thought they could be killed. But it also brings up the question, like besides the fact that this shows the bullet was coming from the front, every step of the way, you see the government trying to cover something up. And if you were to believe that, okay, well, maybe he was missing the back of his head, but that it doesn't mean Oswald didn't or whatever, then why would they try and cover everything up? But they were at every step, they're fucking trying to cover everything up. They refused to allow an autopsy in Texas, which is Texas law. So the Texas doctors tried to stop them from taking the body, but they said, no, we're taking it. And so they took it, they fly it back to Bethesda Naval Hospital. They then do the autopsy there, which in another court proceeding, which is with the lawyer Garrison that's portrayed in Oliver Stone's JFK movie. Another doctor says at the autopsy in Maryland, in Bethesda, he is told not to cut open and examine the throat wound. He's told it's just a tracheotomy, which it clearly wasn't. And they wouldn't allow him to examine it because they don't want him to say, yeah, it's an entrance wound of a bullet that was fired from the front. So that's in the court records, is him saying that he was told during the autopsy not to examine the throat wound. But on top of that, they have to find a way to create an X-ray that doesn't show the back of his head missing. So he gets back, the body gets back to Bethesda, and then the X-ray is released showing the back of the head there on the X-ray. And so here's the thing, is like, even if you want to be a total believer of the main story, okay, Oswald did it, then why the fuck would they try and cover up every witness, get everyone to say the back of his head wasn't missing, change the X-ray so that the X-ray showed a back of a head piece? And speaking of the back of the head piece, the fragment from his head may be the same one that, or it could have split into multiple fragments, but it might have been the same one that Jackie Kennedy was trying to grab in her kind of instinctual response. But a piece of a skull fragment was found the following day in Dealey Plaza. It was found by a kid named William Harper. He takes it to his father, who's a doctor at Methodist Hospital. That doctor then sits down with pathologist Dr. Noteboom, and they agree that it's the lower back part of a human skull. So again, it's the same spot that everyone said was missing from JFK's head. So I'll give one more.
To clarify here. So there's like,
yeah, go ahead.
So it's clear that there's two bullet holes. There's one entrance wound in the throat, and then the front one that took out the back of his head. So we got shot in the front, but in the front twice.
It seems he got shot in the front twice, I think. Yeah.
And it's impossible because the motorcade had already passed by
the book depository.
The book depositories. If he was here and the book depository was up there, it would have been a shot in the back of the head, and the front would have come off.
Right. Or I think bullets sometimes do go straight through and have a fairly bullet hole sized hole in both sides.
Sure. But
when there's a large piece blown off, that only happens when it's the second surface that gets hit, you know? So I want to do one other, I'll wrap it up here in a minute, but I want to do one other part of this about a guy who films. Oh, and by the way, I didn't get to, so they released this X-ray showing him having the back of his head, which clearly had to be fabricated. And when the X-ray was examined with something that examines light density, it shows that the densities are all off. They don't correspond, meaning that these are different X-rays that have been pasted together to make it look like there's the back of a skull there, which is a level of cover-up. You're like, they would only go to that much trouble if it was something very extreme they were trying to cover up. So let's see. So there's this guy, he's a naval officer, and he's with their audio visual department, and he gets a call when the body's brought to Bethesda Naval Hospital. And his name is Lieutenant Commander William Pitzer. And so Pitzer is told to come in and film the proceedings. So he goes in to the Naval Hospital and films the president's autopsy. And he has still images as well. And so he films the body of the president. He sees that it's missing the back rear side of the head, same as Jackie Kennedy said. Same as, and I don't think I quoted him, but the agent that famous image of her reaching out, the agent that climbed onto the back of the car, in his initial statements, he says that she instinctually was reaching for a piece of his skull to put it back. So even he says she wasn't reaching her hand out to pull him onto the car, which to me that was kind of like a mind expanding moment, because I was like, God, this image that I've grown up with, that like when I picture the Kennedy assassination, I picture her helping this guy onto the car, and that's not what the fuck was happening. Okay, so this guy Pitzer goes in, he films the autopsy. Now Now he's with the naval. He's in the Navy for a couple more years after he films the autopsy. The autopsy shows him missing the back rear of his skull. And I think there's important, before I explain what ends up happening, there's an important fact to this. You might, nowadays we think if someone has information, like this guy's just filmed the autopsy of the president, we believe like that information could be around the world instantaneously. But that's not how it was then. How it was then, unless you had access to a big form of communication like a major TV network or at least a radio network with a large area, you couldn't get information out to that many people at once. Right. Like if this guy were to begin telling everyone, I saw it, the president was missing the back side of his head, they could stop him after he's told 10 people or 20 people or whatever, unless he gets to a big news network. So this guy goes for a couple of years still in the Navy, and then he's about to retire from the Navy. And right before he retires from the Navy, he is shot to death in 1966. His body discovered on the floor of the TV production studio of the National Naval Medical Center, his work area. And the Navy rules that Pitzer had committed suicide, even though none of his family believes that or anything else. So why was he leaving the Navy? Why was he retiring the Navy? Well, he was retiring the Navy. This is from Dennis David, his longtime friend and someone who knew him well, who had seen the footage. David says, quote, he had some very lucrative offers from a couple of national networks like ABC, CBS to go and work for them. And David believes the offers were connected to Pitzer's assassination film. So it makes sense that why would they not? Some people might ask, well, if they were going to kill him, wouldn't they have just killed him immediately after he took the footage when they realized that it was important? But they wouldn't have thought there was a risk really until this guy's about to retire and go join a TV network. So his film has never been found, although other people have seen it, like this Dennis David guy. Anyway, years go by. 1995 comes around, and the man... well, this guy, I'm looking for his name. This guy comes forward named Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Marvin of Special Forces. He comes forward and says that he was asked by the CIA to kill Pitzer. He was a Green Beret, and he was asked to assassinate Pitzer. And this guy feels he didn't do it. He said no. But the only reason he said no was because he said, although he did do that kind of thing for the CIA, he said, I would only do it on foreign land. So he wasn't going to kill an American in America, was what the reason he gave. But he did feel bad for the other things he was involved in. I guess he was involved in other hits or whatever he did with the Green Berets and the CIA. And for that reason, he called up Pitzer's former wife and told her about this, basically because he couldn't keep the secret anymore and felt horrible that he was even asked to do it. And when he came forward, Daniel Marvin came forward, he was denounced and expelled by the Special Forces Association, which then means he loses his pension and everything else, which also serves as an example to anybody else in Special Forces who might know something, such as the guy who actually did kill this guy. These people stay quiet, not just because they fear for their lives. They also stay quiet because they will lose all of their income, all of their pension, everything else. And you have other witnesses who didn't come forward until late 90s, early 2000s, because they also didn't want to lose their pensions. They were afraid for their life, etc.
This is like, I mean, this stuff is insane in a certain way, and not that it isn't true, but I mean, it's just to show the insanity of what lengths they will go to seal this up. And now you see how much more sophisticated they've become, because, as you said, it was harder for them to control, like you couldn't get the story out. So it's actually in some ways easier for them to kind of control the narrative in a sense of they can just, doctor this now. And you also see how they went, we just need to control every aspect so that we can now they control the whole narrative from the moment it gets out on social media, and if it does, if there is some random person with a camera phone that puts some footage out there, they just refute it.
Well, and it is true that they're not as blatant anymore because they knew they could. There weren't even that many people with video cameras. I mean, they were nearly able to get every camera footage of the assassination. Now they know that they're in a time when everybody has a camera, there's CCTV everywhere. And so they wouldn't just, shoot a president in broad daylight anymore. They have other tactics that. Well,
they never, right. I mean, and as we talked about at the beginning of the segment, they will never let somebody like JFK ever become president again. And they haven't. Since that time, there's been nobody. And again, his brother got close. Nope. Took him out. And since that time, we've had nothing but deep state puppets. I mean, nothing, even Carter. I mean, to a certain extent. And he wasn't a big threat to them. I mean, but he only did one term. And
he wasn't a huge threat to them at first, and then he slowly became a slightly greater threat, which is why they made sure he didn't get another term. But
yeah, and that's they probably thwarted his rescue attempt of the Iranian hostages, because had he rescued them, that rescue attempt had been successful, he would have been reelected in a heartbeat, and they knew it.
It became clear after Reagan was elected that he had spoke to Iran and basically made sure they kept the hostages until he was elected.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was like, and you see now that we've had nothing but willful puppets, and all of the people in all the positions, the key positions of power, not just the presidency, but the Senate and the House and the cabinet and, the attorney general and the media, of course, this will never this was the most talked about conspiracy for immediately following it, but for years, there was there was all kinds of people talking about it. And so it was
I think that's partially why they stopped with the blatant stuff. Also video cameras became more prevalent, but I think that talking about what happened to JFK has become such a massive national conversation, and the efforts they've had to go to just shut down that conversation have been immense. And so it's like they can have more success sidelining people without shooting them. Right. So, there was a brief window where it was like let's, and we're maybe about to talk about Fred Hampton here in a second, that there was a brief window of about 20 to 30 years, although I'm sure before that it was probably even easier to kill people, but 20, 30 years where it was like they knew they could shoot someone like MLK and not have that much to clean up. It wasn't that tough for them to clean it up and to make it questionable enough and control the narrative enough that even if some people doubted it, it wouldn't be enough to risk their power,
Yeah, but exactly. And this big gesture of giving a president getting assassinated, there's too many questions. So now they do character assassinations. They never let anybody get close enough that might be a threat to them. They subvert them before they ever get close, or there's some crazy story planted about somebody, or like Bernie, for example, he was never going to get in the White House. They were never going to let him. They did everything they could. Right. And, maybe he was threatened. Maybe that was always my question, why he quit so quickly last March. He just was like, I'm done. My good friend Joe Biden. It was like, what did they threaten him with? And you see that. That's why anybody, if somebody had, some evidence that JFK Jr.'s plane went down in nefarious conditions, I would be open to the fact, because they just know they saw the power of the Kennedy name. That's why they, made sure.
Right. But nowadays, rather than shooting people where there's, that there can be a lot of talk about who the shooter was and where the bullets came from and stuff like that. Nowadays, or, since then, it's been more like planes going down, because then it's like, how do you ever doubt? You can't really, there's no evidence to show. There's no video of it. There's no, or another example someone I think was almost definitely taken out is Michael Hastings, where his car, which, we know that these type of cars can be hacked and then sped up to hundreds of miles an hour, in which case you're basically going to crash. But this is a reporter who had revealed everything about General Petraeus. He then emailed wherever he was, Buzzkill or BuzzFeed or one of those. There's his final email to them is, "I'm on to something big. If the FBI shows up to the offices, say you want a lawyer. I'll be off the grid for a few days." His car in LA, this is 10 years ago, 8 years ago, explodes in a fiery ball after running into a tree. And this is in like 2 a.m. or something. And, that would be, if they were going to take someone out, that would be how they would do it now. They're generally, I think most of the time shooting people is just, it raises too many questions.
Yeah. So they do. Yeah, exactly. You make up a great point. Sharina Shim, right? She uncovered that the United States was taking, basically ISIS and Al-Qaeda troops through American bases through Turkey. She revealed that, she had a mysterious car accident. She has a car accident in Turkey. 2 ambulances show up. The one that picked her up took her to a hospital way, way far away. So, and she was dead on arrival. This kind of stuff, this is how it happens. Like now you can ask questions. Seth Rich. Oh, he was mugged. And if you ask questions, you're a conspiracy theorist just for asking the question about Seth Rich.
I also love the term conspiracy theorist, because it's like, what the fuck did the media do for 4 years with the Russia collusion thing? That was the craziest conspiracy theory I've ever seen, and they did it for 4 straight years, and now they want to call other people conspiracy theorists.
Oh, it's insane. And they're trying to blame everything that happened at the Capitol on Fox News. It's like, wait a minute. If you're going to say the election and, Trump was cheated by Biden cheated Trump in this election, if that's a conspiracy theory, then what, again, like you said, you pushed Russiagate for 4 years and it's been roundly debunked. So you helped create this environment where nobody trusts any election, because when Hillary lost because she ran a horrible campaign and people hate the Clintons, she couldn't take responsibility, because like all narcissists, people with narcissistic personality disorders like Trump and the Clintons, they can never admit they're wrong. So they always have to blame other people, which is like that. And
my favorite thing to point to as the proof that they were just looking for someone to blame was, a lot of people forget, who did they blame her election loss on for roughly 1 week before they realized it was a bad idea? They blamed it on Comey and the FBI. They blamed it on Comey reopening the investigation on Hillary. And I don't know, like 5 days in, they were like, oh, perhaps the Democratic Party going up against the FBI right now is not the best idea. Let's blame it on Russia. And suddenly Comey became this national hero, and Russia was the ones that hacked the election. And I was like, well, that's funny, because for 5 days you said Comey was the one who costed the election.
Yeah, I know. And then they liked Comey when Comey opened up an investigation about Trump or what. Then when he was on Stephen Colbert, everybody likes him again. I'm like, God, you guys are so stupid. You'll just believe any dumb crap. If Stephen Colbert likes him, then I guess I like him. Hillary did. Oh, I don't like him. I'm so dumb. I can't think for myself. That's why I'm still using Facebook. I'm a stupid Gen Xer. Anyway, I'm a little hard on my own generation. But
speaking of that, everybody can follow me at facebook.com/
Oh God.
So yeah, next week I will get into why they needed to kill Kennedy, or they believe they needed to kill Kennedy, and everything he was doing that was lighting the CIA and the military-industrial complex on fire and infuriating them. And then the following week, I will get into Oswald and who he was and all the evidence that he was not the one who shot Kennedy.
Right. Lee Camp, how are you, sir?
Hey, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm excited for a Government Secrets episode 27, JFK segment number 2. Magic bullet.
Well, I was going to say what's interesting that's happened since our last episode, and hopefully for those of you watching that you caught the last episode. It was the first time we did an extensive thing on JFK, and in uploading it, everything went wrong on my end. On you got yours up, and then I usually take your feed and I put it on my channels as well. And so the first thing I noticed was even under your feed, so basically under all of them on YouTube, there is the largest warning label I've ever seen on a video. Ever. Larger than even my Redacted Tonight show, which has a warning label that says, the Russians are responsible for this. This warning label to talk about JFK is even bigger. And it basically gives you, are you pulling it up now?
Yeah, I'm trying to grab it.
Okay. Yeah, it basically gives you the kind of like the CIA talking points of what happened to JFK, as if that is the official version. Because now we're told whatever the blue label under a video says is what reality is. That's how YouTube wants you to view it. If there's a blue label, then that is reality. No matter what the whack jobs on the video screen may say, YouTube's got you covered. So
is this under yours or the redacted one? It's under your YouTube.
Oh yeah, it's Moment of Clarity is mine, but it's also under yours, right, on YouTube.
Yeah,
the warning label.
I didn't think the warning label. Let me check if the warning label came.
Oh, you didn't have yours titled JFK, right?
Yes, I just had.
Right, you just had government secrets. It's because it's titled JFK assassination. So yeah, go to youtube.com/Moment of Clarity.
Ocean. Understand.
But anyway, it says it says that Oswald killed Kennedy, and then somehow, even though it's just 3 or 4 sentences long, it manages to squeeze in there that Oswald was a Marxist and he once defected to the Soviet Union.
Unbelievable. That God, I gotta find this.
It actually says blah ha 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 on the thing.
YouTube.com what? /
Moment of Clarity. Okay. I can tell you're a regular watcher.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to my subscription. They probably just unsubscribed it.
Well, I'll vamp. For those of you out there, this is part 2 of the JFK assassination that may be have even a bigger warning label. We'll see if the warning label grows like a leech, sucking the life force out of our video with the second installment. This is a 3-part series on the assassination of JFK. On top of the warning label, I repost the feed, and everything goes wrong. First of all, it freezes the video before I show the image that I wanted to show of Jackie Kennedy trying to grab the piece of skull off the back of the car. The video freezes and stays frozen for the next 50 minutes or whatever, like the rest of the episode. Even though the audio continues, the video freezes. Here it is.
There's a big warning. So it says, it says assassination of JFK Kennedy, Encyclopedia Britannica. So the CIA has now gotten to the Encyclopedia Britannica. Assassination of John F. Kennedy, mortal shooting of John F. Kennedy, 35th President of the U.S., as he rode in a motorcade in Dallas, Texas, November 22nd, 1963. His accused killer was Lee Harvey Oswald. So they can't even verify that, but apparently we're the crazy ones. A former U.S. Marine who had embraced Marxism and defected for a time to the Soviet Union. Oswald never stood trial for murder because while being transferred after having been taken into, and then they go into the whole long, he was murdered.
Now keep in mind, I mean, if you were looking that up in the Encyclopedia Britannica, okay, they're going to give you probably the standard definition. But keep in mind, this is YouTube against our will, plastering something across our videos to let you know that you should not believe the things we're saying. You should believe the things the CIA said.
It's fascinating. Like, literally, it's probably some of the best street team marketing this show could ever get. I think it's just like, oh, here's the government not wanting one of their secrets to come out, and they've even bought up Encyclopedia Britannica to say,
yeah, Britannica's like Wikipedia. It's not like they have to own every fact, but on the important stuff, they're gonna give the government talking points. And if they weren't, like, Wikipedia started out like more of the Wild West, and you could put things up there that were not government talking points, but it's been co-opted, it's been taken over. I've covered it before. The Gray Zone has talked about how they're not considered a legitimate source on Wikipedia. So you basically have to link to New York Times and CNN and stuff like that to prove a fact on Wikipedia, which, of course, if you're trying to prove something that CNN and New York Times are lying about, how can you link to New York Times and CNN?
I know.
But then putting the video up was just a catastrophe. I have someone who helps me, upload videos and stuff, and he said he's like spent all day on it, and it just kept crashing. And he said he's never had so much difficulty putting up a video on YouTube.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then they put this thing on there. I mean, I think probably because you have, you work for RT, so they, you're on the Russia radar.
Right.
That's why they were like, oh, another Ruski trying to say that, trying to free his Ruski buddy Oswald. It's like,
well, yeah, that's step one that gets me kind of hype. They're kind of hyper alert. I mean, I would imagine if we ever were to find out what goes on behind closed doors at Facebook and YouTube, most videos have a standard algorithm looking for terms that they find controversial, like the word terrorism or something. And then, but beyond that, there's got to be a separate list of people and outlets and entities that are on some sort of, bright red alert list that gets more heavily suppressed. And it has to do with entities, me having a show at RT, but I think it also has to do, I think it's happened to you because of all your Epstein coverage and
right. Yeah. And it's like and I've done a lot of anything anti-war. I mean, you just put Yemen in the title and done.
Right.
Over.
Right.
Shut that down. So this is like, so I don't think the deep state understands how ridiculous they are, but just to clarify for our audience, if you're watching or listening to this, first of all, hit the like button, subscribe, give it a positive review on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Make sure if you subscribe to one of our YouTube channels, make sure you subscribe to the other guy's channel. But just to clarify here, on a podcast called Government Secrets, we're doing a 3-part segment on the JFK assassination and the cover-up, and they stifle us from putting up a video about the cover-up of the JFK assassination, and then put a Encyclopedia Britannica says this is the fact. And even in the details of the Encyclopedia fact are, we think it's Oswald. And oh, by the way, he was murdered by Jack Ruby, a nightclub owner. So we're all just supposed to play along with this like it's normal, which is...
Yeah, a nightclub owner with... next week's segment will involve... we'll get into Jack Ruby, but a nightclub owner with CIA ties and with mafia ties. Who they claim was, because he was seen crying at many of these scenes, and they claim he was just real torn up about Kennedy dying.
Of course. And that's why the security guards, that brought out Lee Harvey Oswald, real secure. They're just going to walk him out there, and then
we'll get this. And so this is one of the things we'll get into next week. It happened twice. They brought in, so they only had Oswald in custody, 2 days or something, maybe 3. And within that time, they march him out in front of Jack Ruby twice. Most people don't know about the first one, but it was on TV. These were 2 separate press conferences where they dragged Oswald out in front of people and said, here's Oswald. Oh man, did he kill the president? And the first time, Jack Ruby was almost definitely supposed to kill him and didn't follow through with it. For some reason, couldn't bring himself to do it because he's a CIA. He's connected to the CIA, but he was like a gun runner and things like that. He wasn't a killer. And so they kind of put him up to this, like made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Basically, it's if Oswald goes down, you're going with him. So you have to do this. And they march him in front of Oswald, in front of Jack Ruby one time. Doesn't work. So then they do a second press conference like a day later, again marching Oswald in front of people who have not been searched or like questioned or like, do you have a gun? Oh, I don't know. And the second time Ruby follows through with it.
And that's I can't remember. I don't know if it's Bill Hicks or not, but there's some comic that's like, even it might have been Bill Hicks, but even you watch those guys, if you think they're not in on it, they're just like holding Ruby out at the side, like, oh, there you go, Jack. Like, just like
they're like all inching away.
There you go, pal. Like, whoop, we know this is coming. Just like that famous photo of the guy that's just like, oop, not my problem. Like, boink, right. Here you go, Jack. Just like throwing chum into the shark water. Right. All right, so let's get into part 2 now. We talked about last time in part 1 about basically the head wound was the main thing you focused on, was how, and the cover up from the medical examiners and the cover up of the basically doctored x-ray showing, oh no, his skull was intact. It's like, what?
Right. Even though a large piece was found the following day. Yeah.
Right.
And someone commented on my website, they were like, this isn't true. His skull was intact. But I mentioned it, perhaps I didn't harp on it very long, but I mentioned that 21 of the 22 doctors and nurses that were at the first hospital before his body was shipped to Washington, 21 of 22 said the back of his head was blown off. So there you go. This isn't like one rogue eyewitness who got it wrong.
21 of 22.
Yeah. But so this week, here's the thing is, because there's tons of information, we could talk about this for hours and hours. I just decided to pick 3 segments that I feel like are kind of the most important things. The first one being like the fact that he was shot from the front, and possibly multiple shooters, and the cover up involved in that. This week, and like I said, next week will be Oswald and Ruby. This week, I wanted to focus on why Kennedy had to be taken out by the CIA and our military-industrial complex. What was it that made him a unique threat that they were willing to go to this level? Because obviously, it had to be something that was worse than your average president making a decision the CIA didn't like. So I figured I'd focus on that this week.
Nice. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So,
first segment, second part of JFK, contradicting Encyclopedia Britannica.
Government Secrets War with YouTube Encyclopedia Britannica.
Today's sponsor, Encyclopedia Britannica. Black and white lies for you to consume.
You can CIA everything you need to find at Encyclopedia Britannica.
You can CIA. Everything has just got CIA acronym. The Culinary Institute of America.
So, oh my God, that would be the great reveal at the end of the American Empire. It turns out the CIA was the Culinary Institute of America the whole time, and they were pulling the strings all along. Culinary Institute pulling the strings.
A bunch of chefs just really.
Listen, Guy Fieri, you're telling me he's not up to some deep state shit? Come on.
It all started with Julia Child. If she wasn't CIA, I don't know who was it. You know what I'm saying?
So, the Kennedy, I think it's important to start out with. Kennedy did not start off his presidency or his run for the presidency as like Mr. Peacenik. I want to love everyone, and we're going to make friends with the Soviet Union. And he actually ran on a pretty belligerent platform. He accused who was it he was running against?
Well, he ran against Eisenhower. It's Nixon. He ran against Nixon.
He ran against Nixon, but
Eisenhower was the president. But he he ran against Nixon. But anyway, he was accusing the other side. I don't know specifically Nixon of not like making enough nuclear weapons. Like we needed more, and he was like fully into the Cold War. He escalated the Vietnam War, but so he starts to have a change fairly quickly. And
one of the big moments is the Bay of Pigs, because he's talked into doing the Bay of Pigs, allowing these refugees with U.S. assistance to invade Cuba to try and get back Cuba for the United States and for capitalism. And they basically say to Kennedy that, oh, it's got a great chance of success. But of course, it's an utter catastrophe. These people don't at all succeed in taking over Cuba. And immediately as it's happening, the Joint Chiefs are telling him, oh my God, it's gone wrong. We have to invade Cuba. We've got to have their back of this invasion. And Kennedy refuses. He does not go along with what the military wants to do, which is invade Cuba full on. And from that point on, he is completely distrustful of the CIA and the Joint Chiefs, and they're completely distrustful of him. They also brought to his desk, side note, they brought to his desk the Operation Northwoods and asked if they could do it, which was to create bombings in Florida where that would kill civilians that they would claim were Cuban bombs. And he, when it came to his desk, he was like, you fucking out of your mind? Kill innocent Americans to create war with Cuba. So this distrust and his change of mind about the view of the CIA kind of takes place. And at one point, he's quoted as saying he wants to break the CIA up into pieces and scatter it to the wind. So he becomes like a borderline enemy of the CIA. I mean, they view him as just a fucking catastrophe for their Cold War means, for their goals. And he's also disagreeing with the Joint Chiefs. They also have a bunch of debate about preemptive strikes, nuclear strikes, where they're trying to convince him to preemptively strike the Soviet Union with nuclear warheads to stop them because they could do it to us. And they're talking about, they have meetings where they tell him, oh, they'll probably lose 10 million citizens or something like that. And he's like, you fucking crazy. He marches out of these meetings and is just furious. And I think other things were going on in his life as well that caused him to kind of have this change. Then there's the Cuban Missile Crisis, where probably another U.S. president would have ended up firing a missile, possibly getting into a nuclear missile exchange. Who knows how it would have ended.
Well, I want to interject on that a little bit. A lot of people know that the Cuban Missile Crisis was really pretty amazing now that we know about it, how JFK and Khrushchev were basically trying to kind of communicate with each other.
Yeah, I was going to go to that next. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Because they were trying to communicate because we had JFK had the Joint Chiefs of Staffs and the CIA going war, war, war. And Khrushchev had all of his generals saying basically very similar stuff. And he was like, you guys know that nobody wins in this. We're all dead.
Nobody wins. Yeah.
So they were basically communicating with each other. But and then the other thing you said, there were some other personal reasons why JFK started to soften on the Hawk. Was that just because he was sleeping with Marilyn Monroe, or what?
I think possibly more Mary Meyer than Marilyn Monroe. Mary Meyer was also his mistress, one of his mistresses, but she was kind of the more serious one. They'd known each other forever. I think they kind of wish they had married each other rather than what ended up happening. She was married to a CIA guy. I can't remember which one, but she also was the daughter of the former governor of Pennsylvania. She was blue blood oligarchy as well. And we'll do a whole at least one episode on her later at some point. There's a great book called Mary's Mosaic that's about her assassination, which happens within a year of Kennedy getting killed. She's shot in broad daylight in the back of the head on the canal path here in DC, an average jogging path that's not far from where I live here, and in Georgetown, and just murdered in the middle of the day. And it's pretty clear that it was because she was starting to raise a lot of questions about Kennedy's assassination.
Oh, what's Encyclopedia Britannica? Mary Magdalene was jogging and slipped and fell on a bullet.
Mary Meyer slipped and fell, and there was a bullet on the path that lodged into the back of her head.
Which happens.
It totally happens. Okay, yeah. So there's kind of there's multiple pieces that are all causing Kennedy to butt up with the CIA and the military in general, the Joint Chiefs, which you've got Russia, Cuba, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Indonesia is probably the lesser one, but so I'm going to get into each of those a bit. By the way, this is almost all of it's coming from, except for extra things we're throwing in, is coming from JFK and the Unspeakable, which everyone should check out. And this book it's got footnotes for like every sentence. It's all sourced. You can go back and read the original sources. In lots of cases, he's quoting people. So this is not just a guy, writing a blog who's like, and I just know that Oswald was in Spain on that day. So this is very well researched. So Castro was reaching out for peace. There was some back talk, some back room discussions of Kennedy meeting with Castro. And then there was Khrushchev and Kennedy. And so now I'm quoting from the book. Khrushchev and Kennedy were both going through a change, secretly corresponding to each other. Khrushchev said, quote, to Kennedy, this is one of their private correspondences, "You will be president for probably 6 more years. During that period, we could create good conditions for peaceful coexistence on Earth, and this would be highly appreciated by the people of our countries as well as by all peoples." So they were really, like you said, they both had generals that were saying, we need to go to war. And yet behind the scenes, they were trying to secretly correspond and get away from another missile crisis. And then it came out after his assassination that JFK was actually planning to visit the Soviet Union. And if he did that, it really would have meant the end of the Cold War. Because simply him, the visual and the news reports of him going over there and shaking hands with Khrushchev would have likely meant the end of the Cold War. And Kennedy's friend, the British ambassador, David Ormsby Gore, said in the last conversation he ever had with Kennedy that Kennedy said he had made up his mind to visit the Soviet Union at the first suitable moment. So let's see.
Oh, this show sometimes when you see it's like this is like the Henry Wallace episode where we're like, hey, here was a chance at total world peace and society working together to make a world a better place. Nope, the psychos hijacked it and we're just war for the rest of our lives. So thank you, Deep State, you soulless cocksuckers. You bloodlust, soulless cocksuckers. I just want you to know that when you die, you will be in hell and you're going to get butt fucked on a lake of fire by the devil because you're this evil. I know you're listening. I just want you to know there is repercussions to what you're doing. You can shut us down. You can whatever you want to do, but that is going to happen because I know you're Christians. So just know you're going to get butt fucked by the devil in a lake of fire. I'm sorry, Lee, you were saying.
Unless you're into that, and then it'll be a different orifice. No.
Whichever one you're not into. If that's like turns you on, then it's going to go maybe.
But you're absolutely right that it does. Like it seems like there's multiple times in U.S. history where it's like we're on the brink of like peace, like actually having peace, not a cold war, not a hot war, like peace, and then it's fucking taken away at the last second by these incredibly powerful interests who are kind of working behind the scenes.
Imagine for a second. I'm sorry, but just imagine for a second, had this peaceful thing happened, had Khrushchev and JFK, and then we ended the Cold War, and then we just worked together. And now we're just talking about, wow, Russia and America are leading the charge to stop climate collapse.
Right.
And these two countries that have been peaceful with each other since the early 60s, thanks to JFK and Khrushchev. Wow, look at what we're doing. We have great trade relations and we're sharing all these amazing ideas. Oh, when the pandemic hit, we're all working together. We all found a great vaccine together, and we're ending climate change thanks to them. And we're bringing China into the fold. And so now we're just going to have green energy all over the planet. Oh, wait. Oh, it's better to profit from destroying the earth because we're stupid.
Short-term greedy.
Yep, short-term greedy, long-term stupid.
Yeah, long-term horrific.
Yes.
And so Kennedy, despite having amped up the Vietnam War, he was now having this shift, and he was having discussions about ending involvement in Vietnam. Assistant Press Secretary Malcolm Kilduff said that 2 days before he was killed, JFK said to him in the Oval Office, quote, "We're losing too damn many people in Vietnam. It's time for us to get out. The Vietnamese aren't fighting for themselves. We're the ones who are doing the fighting. After I come back from Texas, that's going to change. There's no reason for us to lose another man over there. Vietnam is not worth another American life," end quote. So that is the assistant press secretary's memory of exactly what Kennedy said to him before heading off to Texas.
Boy, you know, that memo got intercepted and they're like, well, someone's not coming back from Texas. How's that?
Yeah, exactly. And then there was also Indonesia, where President Sukarno, now Indonesia was communist. President Sukarno was a socialist, and he used a lot of anti-American rhetoric, and anti-American empire. On top of that, there were many corporate profits to be made in Indonesia, so that's never good. Look behind you. If you have a lot of resources that we could exploit, you better watch your back. Mm-hmm. But Kennedy wanted peace and said he was open to meeting with Sukarno and would go to Indonesia the following spring. And he also said that days before he was killed. So this would have been this. I mean, if you look at Castro, Khrushchev, and Sukarno and Vietnam, this would be ending the Cold War, or in Vietnam, the Hot War, against, communism and basically countries with a different economic system. It would end that dynamic on most of the major fronts. Even let's assume that some of the rhetoric would continue about we need to stop communism. But for the most part, these meeting these world leaders, showing that we could work with them, it would have completely changed the way things were headed. And then after, and by the way, on each of these fronts, we see what happened just about immediately after Kennedy was killed. You see a reverse course on all of these things. Kennedy is killed, and Johnson reversed course obviously didn't withdraw from Vietnam. Vietnam just kept getting worse. The standoff with the Soviet Union remained horrible, and with Cuba as well. And Kennedy also reversed course on Indonesia. He ended economic aid to Indonesia, except for continuing military aid to General Suharto, who was basically the opposite side of things. He was a kind of a U.S. puppet. I mean, I don't know if he was a full puppet, but he was the guy we were supporting to crush Sukarno. And so with covert support of the U.S. military, General Suharto was preparing to overthrow Sukarno. In October 1965, the CIA finally succeeds, so this is after Kennedy's death, in toppling Sukarno and then helping to destroy the Communist Party of Indonesia, which is a fucking massacre. Estimates of the number of deaths that occurred as a result of the CIA operation run from 500,000 to more than 1 million. As admitted later by the former deputy CIA station chief in Indonesia, the U.S. embassy helped the new government compile death lists of thousands of members of the Communist Party. And then there's this jaw-dropping quote by Robert Martins, a political officer in the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta. But this is 25 years after the fact. So this is when, 25 years go by and these people start to feel like they can reveal some of the reality. So 25 years after the fact, he said, quote, "It really was a big help to their army. They probably killed a lot of people, and I probably have a lot of blood on my hands, but that's not all bad. There's a time when you have to strike hard at a decisive moment." So this is like the classic American story of we act like we own other countries, no matter who they are, no matter who their people are. We act like we own them and they need to behave the way we want them to. And if they don't, then it's kind of our right to kill 1 million people.
Oh, yeah. Suharto was a brutal dictator that was in power, I think, even through the 80s in Indonesia. And and he butchered and tortured people. I mean, just brutal, just in horrific means. But because we backed him, and he gave us, that's the good old American playbook. If you give us your resources or geographic, location to put bases on or whatever, you can literally do whatever you want. You can do what we don't care. You can chop up journalists and scatter them in a garden. You can treat women like second-class citizens.
And not even don't care, like help them do it. We kept like death lists for them. Like, here are the list of people that you need to go do whatever it is you do.
Yeah. And like, it was a horrific time in Indonesia's history that we helped perpetuate. So our tax dollars helped do that. But by the way, I just got my $600 Visa debit card in the mail. So that's, yeah, that's going to pay my rent for the next 6 months.
Guess who's getting a new Nissan Leaf?
Yeah, I think you could buy like 10 Leafs for $600. They're basically just plastic.
The new model has 7 cup holders. But it only accepts green juice. If you try and put something else in there, it actually has an eject button. It'll shoot it at you.
Basically, you just tie a kite to the antenna, and then the kite like kind of pulls you along on the road. So it's really great. It's a great.
The new kite powered Leaf. It sounds amazing.
Oh God.
So, but yeah, back to this. So back to this. He's a political officer of the U.S. Embassy, talking about a lot of blood on my hands. But oh well, it was the thing we needed to do. We needed to strike decisively. And to me, this isn't just about that moment. This says a lot about the kind of the U.S. empire, how we rule over these places. And like, if you think like that, if you are of the sociopathic belief that 1 million people could die, but it's cool because it's for our power and we're America and this will help us, then you rise up the ladder. You end up at a higher position in our government because you think like that. Like, and that's how he gets to the point where he's in this embassy. Like, it is, and you can also understand how people would believe that these same folks could kill JFK. Like, if they're thinking, I'll kill 1 million people so that there's no communism in Indonesia, then what would stop them from thinking, well, we got to kill the president who's getting in the way of our having as many capitalist countries that bend over to our needs as we want?
These people, I mean, yeah, killing 1 million people and killing like it's just like a serial killer. Like, after they've killed their first person, then they just get a taste for it and they just keep going. Only our serial killers run the government, and, they kill, millions of people, and they're considered heroes or patriots. And it's just like, these are psychos, man. These are full on psychos. You're participating in the murder of 1 million people. I mean,
yeah.
And like, oh, this guy that wants peace, we need to kill the guy that wants peace. How deranged is that? Like, I just like, it's like working in a hospital and like, oh, that patient over there is in pain. Well, better give him more pain, I guess, right? Isn't that how we're going to work this hospital of the CIA? Like, it's unbelievable to me.
So speaking of psychos, our old friend Truman shows up in an interesting manner.
Our old pal Truman.
Now, as we covered on a previous episode, he was not a good person. Okay. He very much enjoyed dropping the atomic bombs, as far as we could tell. Very, very racist, in general, but however, he seemed to be having some second thoughts about a little outfit that he created called the CIA. And he, so 1 month after, and this is amazing because of how public it is. This is not like some secret note. 1 month after JFK's assassination, former President Truman publishes an op-ed in the Washington Post warning about the danger of the CIA taking over the government. Now, do you think that maybe JFK's assassination clicked something in Truman's head where he was like, I think I know who might have done this? So he writes this op-ed warning about the danger of the CIA taking over the government. He wrote, quote, "For some time, I've been disturbed by the way the CIA has been diverted from its original assignment. It has become an operational and at times a policy-making arm of the government. This has led to trouble and may have compounded our difficulties in several explosive areas." Now, I feel like you couldn't be more obvious in what you're hinting at if he had written explosive areas like JFK's exploded head, like
Vietnam, like other places. Like, I had no idea that weird that this isn't ever covered. This wasn't covered in the history. Is this an Encyclopedia Britannica?
Yeah, is that what's the bottom of our video? Yeah, and not only is it not talked about now, but it was met with almost silence at the time that it came out. It was almost completely ignored, except by people connected to the CIA. They took notice of it. So Alan Dulles, who, let me just pause here and say, Alan Dulles was the head of the CIA. When Kennedy got in this back and forth and wanted to crush the CIA, he fires Alan Dulles. Alan Dulles is then on the Warren Commission. Why would you put the guy from the CIA who Kennedy hated so much he fired him at the Warren Commission to write the report on who killed Kennedy?
Wow.
So Dulles takes leave from his duties at the Warren Commission. Again, this is a month after JFK has been killed, and went to visit Truman in Missouri. So he gets on a plane from D.C. to Missouri because this op-ed clearly upset him so much, being former head of the CIA. And he goes to Missouri and he meets with Truman. And then what we have in the public record now that's been declassified are his notes as to what was said at that meeting. He claims in the notes that Truman disavowed the op-ed and it didn't reflect his views at all, which is utter horseshit. Dulles was writing this for the benefit of them in the future to be able to show these notes and say that Truman disavowed this op-ed. But in fact, that doesn't jive with Truman's own notes that led to the op-ed. So they now have publicly, you can go apparently view them or at least they're at the Truman Library. I don't know if you can see them, but they're at the Truman Library. His notes that were written 3 weeks before the op-ed published. And if you do the math, Truman's notes 3 weeks before the op-ed was published is 1 week after Kennedy is killed. So Kennedy is killed. Truman sits down and jots notes about how the CIA is taking over the government. And Truman's notes, of course, say the same thing his op-ed said, showing that he didn't disavow it. He repeated comments going forward about how the CIA's purpose was supposed to be intelligence gathering when he created them, and they clearly were doing slightly more than intelligence gathering. But to me, this is so important because not only does it show that Truman likely thought the CIA was involved, but also if the real story, if the bullshit state story of what happened to Kennedy were true, why would Dulles be afraid? Why would Dulles go running to Missouri to say, you got to disavow this?
Of course. I mean, there's just so much evidence on Scott. This is all new stuff I didn't know about the JFK assassination. This is fantastic. But yeah, it makes a great point because if look, we know for a fact it was Lee Harvey Oswald. Be like, Truman, the old man's off his rocker again, probably just playing too much poker with his Klan buddies. So that's why he wrote this op-ed piece.
Did they finally let him in after he was president?
Yeah. Look, now you're in, Mr. President. Now we'll let you in. Yeah, it makes none of this makes any sense. It's like the Jack Ruby argument doesn't make any sense. He was just an angry citizen or whatever. And so, yeah, why would Dulles do this? Why did Dulles' notes completely contradict Truman's notes? And did Truman, after the Dulles meeting, retract his statements or put out a new statement or anything?
No, there's other quotes from him later in life, like as his life continues, saying the same thing, that the CIA had gotten too powerful and he worried about what they were involved in and that they were meant to be an intelligence gathering outfit.
Wow. It's so blatant. I always think of The Sopranos. Like I think of this episode of this episode of The Sopranos when I forget his name, but he was the guy that the actor was he ran the comedy club in Vegas, the big dude. Goes to meet with this like union guy or something like that, and he sits down and he goes, "Oh, hey, you're the union boss. I heard you're gonna vote for this guy." And he goes, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to intimidate. He goes, "Man, if I voted for the guy you're going to vote with, I couldn't live with myself. I'd put a bullet in my head here, here, and here." And the guy shakes, and then he pays for his drink and walks out. And of course, the guy votes in favor of the mob guy or whatever. And I was like, that's just how the CIA operates. They're just like, oh, be a real shame if you were on a parade and a magic bullet came flying around swung around and got you and a couple other people. That'd be a real shame. It's just like, that's how this is like the CIA is just like the mob. You know what I mean?
Right. So now imagine that instead of just voting for the wrong guy, Kennedy is ending the Cold War and completely reversing track with like four of the most important fucking international situations.
And you just see like how critical it was for this now military industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about, the CIA that Truman warned us about, why they warned us, because now let's cut to 50 some years later. We have a completely out of control military. We spend more than the next 10 countries combined. We have both parties that have been completely bought out and hijacked by these companies. We have corporate media, like literally MSNBC and Fox and all them are always showing ads for Raytheon and Boeing, which is like, why is Boeing advertising on a big corporate media? Is anyone at home going, "Oh, honey, the new F-35s are in"? Like, nobody.
I know that's my favorite thing is them advertising on all these channels as if those ad dollars have any point other than to just buy that network, like own that network.
And we see it like. We can't even get to, I literally got $600. We couldn't even get $2,000, but we always have money for war. We can't pay for Medicare for all, but we always have money for war. And it's what these guys all saw, whatever their backgrounds, whatever they initially saw, they saw this get out of control because here's the thing about Eisenhower, Truman, and Kennedy. They all either directly served in World War II, or at least were around it enough to see how awful it was. And they saw what a world war looked like. And with the invention of the atomic bomb, they saw like, oh man, this is no joke anymore. This isn't just armies fighting. This could like wipe out life on planet Earth. And they were like scared. They were all like, this is.
Yeah, it was. I think I remember in the atomic bomb episode we did. What it was like 6 of 7 generals, I think, of the 7 5-star generals or something in World War II said that the atomic bombs didn't need to be dropped.
Yeah. When we did the episode about how we could have, Japan wanted peace, and we, Truman wanted to drop the A bomb, and even after he did that, maybe he had like, oh wow, maybe that was a little much, or whatever moment of clarity he had. And now he's sitting there. I'm just guessing at this point, but he's sitting there after having been out of office for quite a while, late in life, and he's watching the war machine keep going on. And he's like, I got to write this op-ed piece about the CIA. And then ding dong. Oh, Alan Dulles, what are you doing?
Hi, Alan. How you doing?
What were you in the neighborhood? Yeah, I just happened to pop by. There was a couple of CIA plants I wanted to.
So I got one more point about before we can wrap this one up. So to go back to Kennedy's relationship with the Soviet Union, he's, as we said, he's got these overtures and these backdoor texts or whatever messages going with Khrushchev, and he also gave a speech. This is June 10th of 1963, and it's now become a famous speech among anybody who researches this stuff. But at the time, it was largely ignored. But he gives a commencement speech at American University, June 1963, so a few months before his assassination, and basically says that we need peace with the Soviet Union. that we should let their people live and we should, live the way they want. And he, talks about peace, poetically. And he also talks about the contributions that the Soviet Union has given us, such as the 20, I think it's more like 27 million that were killed in World War II. He talks about how much they lost in World War II, and that's by default comparing it to what we lost, which we lost less than 500,000 in World War II, less than 400,000, I think. And
we lost around, I did a video on this. We lost roughly 415,000 soldiers, military, and then another 4,000 kind of civilians in Pearl Harbor. So we lost 419,000 people total, which
less than we've lost to COVID-19.
Yes.
Which is horrifying as well.
Yes. Correct. And the Soviet Union lost 20 some million people. They lost 10 million soldiers and another 10 million civilians or something crazy like that.
Yeah. So anyway, you could imagine one of our presidents now giving this speech. It would be people would lose their goddamn minds. And I'm sure internally they did even back then. But so, if you want to go read why Kennedy had to be killed in the view of the military industrial complex and the CIA, go read that speech. But here's a kind of the final jaw-dropping fact is that the Kennedy family, I mentioned already how his mistress, Mary Meyer, didn't believe that Oswald had killed him, believed it was CIA, and we need to do it. We'll be doing an episode in not too long on her assassination. But the Kennedy family, Jackie, Robert Kennedy, they seem to have known that it wasn't Oswald who killed him. William Walton was a close friend of the Kennedy family. And so after JFK's assassination, he was sent to Moscow on behalf of RFK and Jackie Kennedy to deliver a secret message, kind of a final message to Khrushchev in back channels. And the Kennedy's message to the Russians was kept top secret until the 1990s. So we only found out in the 1990s what was said between the Kennedy family and Khrushchev as a final word to him. And the Kennedys were relaying the message to Khrushchev, and the message said that, quote, despite Oswald's connections to the communist world, there was a large political conspiracy behind Oswald's rifle that came from a different source. The president was felled by domestic opponents, unquote. He had been, according to the Kennedys, quote, the victim of a right-wing conspiracy, unquote. So at that time, they didn't know that Oswald didn't shoot Kennedy, but they knew that even if he did, he was connected to a large right-wing internal domestic plot to kill JFK.
So it sounds like the Kennedy family needed to read Encyclopedia Britannica.
Man, they were not readers. They didn't look up what actually happened. So
they weren't big readers. The Kennedy.
Yeah.
They weren't reading like 3 books a week or whatever. Yeah.
So you can see why, with that kind of knowledge, RFK had to be taken out. Mary Meyer had to be taken out. The cleanup of this assassination is immense. I haven't read it, but I know there's a long list of people that are connected to the JFK assassination or eyewitnesses or whatever that either ended up dead very young or in one case, I think I'm going to talk about next week, were locked in a mental hospital for the rest of their lives. And yeah, the cleanup was pretty immense. Yeah. I mean, the Mary Meyer one alone is pretty horrific.
Oh, so
good times.
Good times. You know what I mean? Really, I think of the song, I'm proud to be an American, where at least I'm free. It really.
Maybe we should I know we got one more story we're gonna go through, but maybe we should wrap up these episodes each week with like 5 minutes of just kind of like affirmations, just like. But also, folks, you're good enough. You're smart enough. This land is my land. This land is your land. We're all in this together.
Oh,
And things are looking up.
government secrets with Lee Cameron. Oh, and episode 28. Beep, beep, beep. Oh, demonetized by the CIA.
Oh man, I really hope that you were on the demonetization path, whether we had government secrets or not, because I would feel really bad if with my JFK assassination part 3-parter, I sucked you down into this.
I'm the reverse. I really want that to be the reason I got demonetized. I really want this show to be a huge financial burden. I really want it to. So
you're like, Lee, I was never even going to say JFK's name until you brought this shit up.
I mean, it is like, I was like, Lee, I was government secrets, just like, oh, there's an extra hidden bathroom that's not on the blueprints of like the Capitol. I didn't think you were going to be talking about this stuff. You made it crazy.
I was really hoping we just cover how like the Ronald Reagan had M&Ms on the White House with the presidential logo on it. Like I thought that would be most of what we covered.
Yeah, just like, a secret drawer in the desk or something. I don't know.
Gerald Ford had one ball, like that kind of stuff. Oh.
Is that true? Is that a
Government secret bonus? Gerald Ford's one ball, just like Hitler.
Well, that just got me deplatformed, making that correlation.
Yeah, I know. What are we going to say now that just gets us completely? They're going to remove our channels and just put up a logo that says, "Yeah, fuck this shit."
It's just like, so I don't know. I guess, Lee, I don't know. It's your call. If you want to finish the JFK series, I'm all for it because I don't care if they come at me some more. But
oh, of course, I've been prepping all day for it. Of course, I want to finish it.
Government secrets, part 3 of the JFK assassination / Graham demonetization reason.
Oh man, and I would argue that those two things are equally horrible.
Thank you, Lee. I really appreciate that. But I think the assassination of a president, it might be a half a click above some dipshit vegan losing his ability to buy surfboards. So
oh, the green smoothies are gonna get a little less green. The tint is gonna go a little more brown because you got to buy the older veggies to put in the smoothies.
You gotta buy like bagged, frozen, canned veggies. I can't. It's gonna be horrifying.
Yeah, no, and also it's not like I worry that if we keep covering JFK, they're going to demonetize me. Like I've been doing horrible, in their view, horrible shit, meaning non-neoliberal, non-neocon talking point shit for years. So yeah, if they want to get me, they'll get me. But
yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, I know. So yes, so this is part 3. I intended for this to be the final part, but I have a ridiculous number of notes, and on top of that, we just spent a half hour on demonetization. But
so there's going to be a part 4?
There either is a part 4, or we don't actually get to the part where JFK is killed.
Maybe no ending to the JFK series. Just like the truth.
No, I don't know. We can do whatever you want, but I'm just going to start going, and we'll see where this goes.
All right, dude, I'm down with whatever.
And you know what? You tap out whenever you want. You just say, "Listen, I am fucking bored. I'll tap out right now." Or bring in your ferret or something.
I'll bring in Saki and the ferret. When they start talking, the ferret start talking. Then you kind of know. Maybe wrap it up.
So, all right, So this was for those who are tuning in now and haven't heard the first two parts, please listen to the first two parts. Basically, I gave the proof that JFK was not shot from the back; he was shot from the front, or at least also shot from the front, but probably exclusively shot from the front. And on top of that, I also gave part two was the background as to why JFK was being assassinated, everything that had led up to that. And, it's pretty irrefutable when you lay it all out. Now I wanted to get into.
Hold on. I have to interject because according to YouTube, they put that banner under your channel saying, Wikipedia says it was Lee Harvey Oswald. Stop lying, you creeps, is what they said.
And somehow managed to get in. They have 3 sentences underneath our video. Somehow managed to get in that he was a Marxist who once visited the Soviet Union.
Of course, yeah.
As if you were to sit down with someone and be like, give me 3 sentences, the most important things of the JFK assassination, they'd be like, Oswald's a Marxist. But anyway.
Yes.
So I want to get into Oswald here. Lee Harvey Oswald. We know he was ex-military, or he was. I think he was still current military at that time. But the question is, was he associated with the CIA? So then you get into James Angleton, who I have not read a lot about James Angleton, although I know he is there's whole books on this guy and how horrific he was and overseeing multiple assassinations. And so there's a lot about, so for anybody out there who's like, why didn't they mention that Angleton, cut off Fred Hampton's cock in 1942? Well, I'm sure I know that all that stuff's out there. I just haven't read up on Angleton, but I know he's horrific. Anyway, he was the head of the CIA's counterintelligence unit from 1954 to 1974. Angleton had authority over their assassinations, basically, among other things. And now notes later reveal that the assassination program included instructions on, if you're going to have a patsy for an assassination you're doing. Now, these are revealed later, years later, in FOIA requests and things like that, or commissions. If you're going to have a patsy, you should associate them with either the Soviet Union or the Czechs in order to blame it on our enemies, basically. And you can, and the note also said, you can create counter espionage files about them that you doctor to make it look like, they come from the past or whatever. So basically say, oh, well, we knew he was going to do some shit. We have this file on him showing he's connected to the Soviet Union. I mean, this was standard operating procedure for them back then. And in the 1970s, the Senate's Church Committee on Intelligence revealed that Angleton's Special Investigations Group held a 201 file, which is like a personnel file showing investigation, on Oswald 3 years prior to JFK's assassination. So Angleton at the CIA is looking into, they have a 201 file on Oswald 3 years prior to JFK's assassination. Now, in all this committee, the Warren Commission, everything, we know that the CIA is told they will lie, and they have stated this. They will lie under oath when they're asked to reveal whether they're CIA. If they can't, they won't. So they'll say, no, I'm not CIA. So we know all of that is lies. If they say Oswald's not CIA, it doesn't matter. However, they kind of accidentally revealed that Oswald was connected to the CIA because they were asked. So Angleton's associate, Ann Eggeter, said under oath during these investigations after the assassination that Angleton's Special Investigations Group was, quote, charged with the investigation of CIA personnel who were suspected one way or another. So that gives away that Oswald was either CIA or CIA affiliated. There'd be no file about him 3 years in advance unless he was CIA or connected to the CIA. There's just no denying that.
Well, yeah, there is. If you're YouTube, you can just deny it. There's, so we've talked about this before. Google owns YouTube. Julian Assange's book, When WikiLeaks Met Google, he talks about how Google and Eric Schwartz, the head of, have been working with the CIA since 2011. We put up these JFK videos, and that ridiculous thing is posted under them. And then I get demonetized, and Lee Harvey Oswald has a personnel file with the CIA. None of these things seem to relate to me. I don't see the connections. I mean, Janet Yellen got speaking fees with Google. Google pulled down all of the 1-star Robinhood reviews after the GameStop, Wall Street Bets people got denied they couldn't do any more trading. It's like, I think, I was on Jordan Sheridan's show earlier today, and he brought up a good point. He goes, like, trying to protest the Democratic Party is useless. We need to start protesting Google and YouTube and these media outlets. Like, that's where it needs to go, because look what they're involved in. Yeah. And now they just control every little thing, and they're literally collecting data for the CIA.
And the head of the former head of Google, he was the head of Alphabet, which is the head of the umbrella above Google. Eric Schmidt left that job to go create things for the Hillary campaign.
Right. Yeah, I said Eric Schwartz. Eric Schmidt. Yeah, that's the guy. Eric Schmidt. Yeah.
Did I say Schwartz? I meant Schmidt. Yeah, Eric Schmidt is connected completely to Hillary Clinton, and this is the head of Google.
And yet we're all supposed to believe Russia hacked the election.
Yeah, I know. Even that lie has become so pervasive that even Pompeo, in this interview he just did, so this is after he's left, he goes, well, let's remember that happened when Biden was vice president. And I'm like, so wait, even Pompeo, who lies about everything, is now saying Russia hacked the election to put Donald Trump in office? Oh, man.
And then blames it on Biden. This is how insane it is. They're just all lying every day. It's like a lot. They just can't keep all the lies straight. So then
that's actually, as I continue in this, it's going to be very clear. I'm not trying to stop you. I'm just saying it's going to become very clear that like they can't keep their lies about Oswald straight. And it all kind of pancakes on top of itself. And they're like, fuck, we have like way too many Oswald stories, like Oswald evidence that doesn't connect to the plot we're trying to put forward. So yeah, I'll just keep going. So the CIA finance officer, Jim Wilcott, another theme you'll see as I keep going is that various people have come forward and usually horrible things happen to them.
Yeah, we've been talking about since you first did this. All the this one medical examiner, fell on a thing of steak knives outside the volcano or whatever.
Right. So CIA finance officer Jim Wilcott and his wife come forward. They were both with the CIA. They were doing finance. They both came forward and they confirmed that Oswald had served with the CIA as a double agent in the Soviet Union. So Oswald is ostensibly military. He then leaves the military and becomes a defector in the Soviet Union. But really, it becomes clear he was a double agent for the CIA to spy on the Soviet Union.
Sure.
But the problem was when he came back to the U.S., or maybe even while he was still in the Soviet Union, I don't know the dates, but the CIA became suspicious of him. So it's like a triple, he pretends he's defecting the Soviet Union. He's actually spying on the Soviet Union. But during that time, the CIA starts thinking, we're not so sure about this guy. So they opened the 201 file, the investigation into whether Oswald has turned or, gone rogue or something. So both Wilcotts, him and his wife, come forward and confirm that Oswald trained at the CIA station in Tokyo, Japan. They resigned from the CIA in 1966, and they were revealed they were told by certain agents that the CIA was indeed involved in the assassination of JFK. The Wilcotts, over time, paid the price for coming forward. Even though they were no longer with the CIA, they were forced out of their post-CIA jobs that were not CIA connected, but The FBI and others went to their employers and basically got them fired. They received threatening calls, letters, had their tires slashed. Jim Wilcott became an activist, nonviolently blocking weapons shipments and holding vigils in the 1980s. He was disabled by a rare nerve disorder, but kept protesting until he died of cancer in 1994. So that's one example of people revealing too much, and then they're, end up meeting with a lot of problems. But in the months leading up to the assassination, Oswald was apparently being set up as a patsy. And it seems that the CIA has multiple patsies that they're kind of setting up at any given time. You generally don't know the names of any of the others because if they're not used, no one talks about them. You don't even know you were being set up. So they were setting up multiple people. One of them we do find out about, which I'll get into in a minute, but so it made sense that they could move him wherever they wanted to. Initially, he said he was moving to D.C. Then that changes. He moves to Dallas. He was in New Orleans not long before that. So it makes sense that they can move him around wherever they need to move him. And they decide to move him to Dallas a few months before Kennedy's coming to Dallas. I'm going to jump back and forth with some of the timeline because it's tough to keep it all straight. But there becomes this Oswald draw attention behavior where there is an Oswald or an Oswald lookalike running around Dallas, mostly Dallas, although other places too, and doing things that are demanding people pay attention and be like, that was fucking bizarre. So he raises a ruckus in Mexico at the Soviet and Cuban embassies, just such a fucking degree that they're like, this guy's fucking crazy, demanding, the papers to allow him to go to Russia, go to Cuba, and very memorable shit. He came into a gun range being loud and spouting that he was an ex-Marine. Then he shoots on someone else's target, which is, if you're at a gun range, the person's like, why the fuck are you shooting my target? And then he glares at him, and 3 witnesses say that Oswald or someone like him was the guy there. The Warren Commission throws out most of these testimonies because there was too much proof of Oswald behaving like a fucking maniac. And it just becomes evident that they had clearly someone that looked somewhat like Oswald. I don't think he would have to look that much like him, but someone like Oswald running around and dropping obvious clues about who they are or what they planned. So but the Warren Commission ultimately doesn't need all this evidence. It's too much. It actually refutes their plot because he's in multiple places at the same time. He's supposed to be in Mexico, but he's running around Dallas doing fucking bizarre shit. He went into a car. He goes to test drive a car, and he says his name is Lee Oswald. He tells the guy, I'm Lee Oswald. He drives the car 85 miles per hour, and the guy's in the car with him. Salesman is like, what the fuck are you doing? Chill out. And then he goes to buy the car, and the guy says, I need a credit check. And so he says, fuck this, and storms out and yells at him, I might have to go back to Russia to get a good car. And it's all these things where if you were former military, former CIA, and you were planning to kill a president, you would you would be completely quiet. You would not do all this shit that's just please pay attention to me. Please remember me in 2 weeks when the president is killed.
Oh, it's so God, it's so just this is perfect. And again, the stuff you're saying in this book that is fact, then now here we are in 2020 and YouTube puts he was a Marxist. This is part of that same tactic.
Right.
They're still in the same way they had some, whatever doppelganger going, I can buy cars in Russia. Lee Harvey Oswald said it, it's the same thing. Like, oh, now, well, look, hey man, I saw this. YouTube is saying, and it's like the thing that's so insane about it is Americans to this day, over 50, 60, 56, 60%, something like that, still believe that something happened. The government, like Lee Harvey Oswald, did not kill JFK. I mean, people still dispute this to this day. So the fact that they're doubling down on this.
Right. Well, you've seen them double down for like my entire life. Like whenever I would see, JFK or something mentioned, and it's like, if anyone would dare question the standard story, then they would always be like, well, there's this crazy person who says, nah. Like they would always write it off. And it was almost like thou doth protest too much. It's like, why? Like, if you believe the real story is that this one crazy guy shot Kennedy from behind from the book depository, wouldn't you want all the information to come out? Instead, it is like all the way back to the Warren Commission. It is this endless effort to throw out tons of information.
And the thing that's so nuts about what happened, like, to me, first that thing on, on our YouTube channels, and then me getting demonetized, looked like mainstream media. I've seen like CBS had like a marksman trying to do it and he couldn't do it. Like mainstream media has covered this story too. Like, and talked about the conspiracies and have said, have asked questions and stuff like that. All the documentaries, all the books, all the stuff that has happened. And yet,
but you'll notice what they like to do is they like to say maybe there was a second person, and they kind of like leave it at that. They don't want to get into government involvement.
Right. It is just like there was a second shooter, not it was the CIA that coordinated all of it.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So one of the biggest, I'm gonna get into two giant ones. Like, why would the Warren Commission throw out this ridiculously obvious evidence? So there's two letters, actually, two separate letters. One is brought into the FBI field office in Dallas, November 6th. So this is a couple of weeks before the assassination, but same city, Dallas. And it's a man walks in, angrily throws a letter down in front of the receptionist. This is the FBI field office. Throws it down, says it's for Agent Hosty. And the secretary sees that the part of the letter that's sticking out of the envelope says, quote, blow up the Dallas FBI office, and it's signed Lee Harvey Oswald. So she sees that, which it seems probably intended for her to see. And so she pulls the letter out and reads it. And it's a threat from Oswald to Agent Hosty to blow up the field office in Dallas because he's furious with the FBI. And at first glimpse, this seems great for the Warren Commission story. This guy is a maniac. He wants to blow up the FBI office. Perfect. We'll show this letter. Done deal. But the problem is it raises too many questions. For one, why didn't the FBI tell the Secret Service about this maniac who wanted to blow up the FBI office? And secondly, it again had Oswald in too many places. I don't remember at this exact same time, but he's supposed to be at the embassies in Mexico, or he's supposed to be somewhere else in Dallas. But whatever it is, it's got Oswald in too many places. So the FBI destroys the letter. This was in the fucking New York Times, for God's sakes. In 1975, the New York Times had a front page article, because that was when they finally found out about this letter. 1975. It comes out, the FBI destroys this letter after Kennedy's killed. Agent Hosty testified to this fact, that he was told by his superior to destroy the letter, get rid of it. And the New York Times, in their article, says that the decision was at the highest levels, which likely means Hoover. So Hoover and others decided, get rid of this fucking letter. Now, why would you want to ignore this amazing piece of evidence that shows that Oswald is a maniac who wants to blow up the FBI office? Because it wasn't actually Oswald. It was intended to create evidence around this patsy, and then it ended up not being useful because too many places at once, and it makes the FBI look like a bunch of fucking idiots.
Look, fellas, we got too much patsy evidence. Did they just get into a room full of people and they didn't plan this? They just go get a bunch of patsy evidence, like just be all over the place, like deliberately be chaotic. So it's like Oswald's everywhere. Oswald has superpowers, like he's a shapeshifter.
I think they had one guy who looked a little like Oswald who ran around saying, "My name's Oswald," but yelling things about Russia, getting mad at embassies, like just designed to lay a trail. But the trail, when you put it all together, actually is all over the place. So
my guess is just to keep the whole, again, the distraction of it wasn't coordinated by the CIA. You know what I mean? Like just to Oswald's nuts. We don't know. Maybe he was here. Maybe he was there. Oh, did he want to blow up the FBI? Like, oh, crazy. Like it was like either they're just blundering morons, like they're run by Gilligan, or it's like that's part of the patsy distraction plan is to just give enough evidence to get people wondering.
I mean, my feeling is that we want to believe, because they've kind of gotten away with it, we want to believe that these guys are infallible. Also, you watch James Bond and you think, oh, CIA agents are just, these guys are incredible and they just know everything and they have everything planned down to the most minor detail. And it's like, no, they're actually human beings who plan a lot of nefarious shit, and some of it goes wrong and some of it doesn't add up. And you have different departments that are not really speaking to each other. That, there's the patsy department with Oswald. Oswald's got a handler, and there's and they're not sitting down and being like, here's the blueprint. Like to a degree, I mean, to a certain degree they are. They got a vague blueprint, but they didn't have enough of a blueprint to make sure Oswald's not in multiple places at once. And so this stuff ends up conflicting. Because, it's the same reason they got spot. I mean, I don't know if we'll get into it at halftime this episode, but the people spotted the fucking gunman. Like, that wasn't supposed to happen. And so it's like they fuck up and then they run around cleaning up their fuck up.
Right.
So
that makes more sense. That they're just like, do this in this department and that department. And then they're just constantly, because I mean, we've talked about this before on the show of just like the CIA collateral, the blowback, as they call it, just like let's do this thing. And then they didn't think it through. Oh, there's blowback. Well, we'll cover that up and we'll lie about that. And then that lie made it bigger and a worse lie. Well, then we'll just blame Russia or whatever they do.
Yeah. And actually, so I mentioned there's two letters. The second letter likely gets thrown out because the blowback could have been nuclear war. So the second letter was from Oswald to the Soviet embassy in D.C., dated November 18th, 1963, 4 days before the murder. Now, Oswald had sent letters to the embassy before, but this one is particularly interesting. It's signed by Lee H. Oswald. It's three paragraphs, like basically lay the blame for the assassination at Russia's door. And some of those, so one of the sentences is in the letter, "This is to inform you of recent events since my meetings with Comrade Kostin in the Soviet embassy in Mexico City." Now, the Warren Commission said Kostin clearly referred to Valery Kostikov, the KGB head in charge of terrorist activities in the Western Hemisphere. So this is no small level guy. This is like their top fucking assassination terrorist activities guy. And here Oswald is sending this letter to the embassy days before the assassination, basically saying, well, I didn't get to where I have the key sentence. The key sentence is he says something about to complete our business. And, it's time to complete our business or something like that. And here's the thing is you kind of have two options here. Do you believe that Oswald is this really well-trained double agent working for the KGB, fucking knows all his shit, takes out the president with Kennedy with fucking amazing marksmanship. Just this guy's fucking, he is James Bond, fucking incredible. Or is he a bumbling moron? Because the Russians and anyone the Russians worked with knew that embassy, the most important U.S. embassy for Russia at the time, D.C., well, today too, all of their mail is read by the FBI. It does not go straight to them. It is grabbed by the FBI. Copies are made. It is then forwarded to the Soviet embassy. So the Soviets immediately know that this letter from Oswald is, oh shit, we lost Graham. You back?
Hold on. Yeah, I had an internet thing go. I think we're all good. Can everyone in the chat make sure you can hear okay? Yeah, I think we just had a quick internet thing. Has nothing to do with us talking about this subject. Yeah, okay. It's all good. It's all good. Sorry, you were saying. Go back a little bit because it kind of froze and then went blank for a second.
Well, I was just saying the Soviets know that all their mail is checked by the FBI. This is like overly obvious. They know it. The FBI obviously is doing it. And so anyone that Soviets were actually working with would know all of our mail coming in here is checked by the FBI. So you think that they coordinate with Oswald to kill the president of the United States and told Oswald, yeah, just send letters to the Soviet embassy that talk about assassinating the president. That's fine. Yeah, sure. Sure, that's fine.
It makes sense to me. I mean, it totally makes sense to me. Like, there's just like, yeah, again, they contradict each other. So yeah, either Oswald was this three-dimensional chess genius or just a bumbling moron. It's just so sloppy. And honestly, the same sort of sloppiness of this last Russia gate. Like they just had to try to pin it on everything. I mean, they tried, oh, Russia was involved in the Capitol uprising. Like Russia was involved in everything. Like it's, you know, they were talking about Russia 2 weeks. I saw somebody before the election on CBS was like, Russia's probably meddling. And then Biden wins and there's no mention of it. So it's like, this just is probably just, you know, this is where it started of just like, oh, send some letters.
Well, so if they, so,
you know, just send it.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Whoever was planning to kill the president, even if you don't think it was the CIA, they realized it could serve two purposes. It gets rid of the president. That last episode we went over why they wanted to take him out, and it also recreates the Cold War, which Kennedy was working behind, you know, back channels to create peace with the Soviet Union. Like that is beyond clear. And he gave speeches that made that clear. So it stops the peace with Soviet Union and restarts the Cold War or puts fuel on the fire and, you know, justifies all of our shit in Vietnam and Indonesia and everything. So that was their goal. But the problem was this letter and some of this other shit to frame the Soviet Union was too much. And Johnson, I think, and maybe Hoover feared that it could create a nuclear war. Like if it came out that the Soviet Union had legitimately just killed our president, like you have nuclear annihilation up at the top of the chart of consequences.
Yeah.
So Hoover calls Johnson the following day, like after Kennedy is killed, and this call is, I guess, on the record or taped or whatever, calls Johnson and tells him about this letter. He says the FBI has a copy of this letter from Oswald to the Soviet embassy. But Hoover specifically, while revealing this to Johnson, does not say that it references the business we have to finish like it's about assassination. And you're like, why would Hoover leave out the most crucial piece of this letter? And it's because Hoover realized this letter was a problem, not a benefit to them. It didn't help their situation. And it threats, it creates a threat of nuclear war, which Johnson realized, even without getting that key piece of information, Johnson realizes this is bad. This could create nuclear war. Also, there's an easy argument to make that Johnson might have known what was about to happen, so he knew that this wasn't the Soviet Union who killed Kennedy. Who knows? But so Johnson decides not to use the letter. The Warren Commission decides not to use the letter. Johnson makes clear, and we have quotes about this, to get rid of this Mexico business. Basically, don't talk about Oswald in the Mexican embassy demanding, the Soviet embassy. Don't talk about this letter to the Soviet embassy saying we need to complete our business. And then Boris Yeltsin gave to Bill Clinton in 1999 documents that had not been revealed until then, showing that after Oswald was killed and after he killed Kennedy, the Soviets knew they had this letter and they had to decide what to do with it. And they knew the FBI was reading their mail. And so they contacted the FBI. They contacted the DC, whatever, the president or someone on his staff on November 26th. And they said to them, look, we have this letter that's supposed to be from Oswald. It's pretty clear forgery. For one thing, Oswald, when he actually wrote to us, was handwritten. This one's typed. And we believe it was meant to set us up. So, and this is revealed to Yeltsin to Bill Clinton in 1999, that they called DC and said, someone before Kennedy was assassinated sent this letter pretending to be Oswald to frame Oswald. Like, that is fucking mind-blowing.
These guys are so, it's so sinister and so tangled. It's hard to it's really hard to get your head around on the one level, but then on the other level you go, well, they're just all about this evil crap. So of course they do all this shit, but it's just like, it never ends. I mean, it's like, and Yeltsin showing Clinton this letter. And of course, Clinton just, whatever, he did nothing with it, or I don't know, took it to Epstein's Island or whatever the hell he
I think he masturbated into it and then rubbed it on Epstein's face, I think.
That makes sense. I don't even all the stuff you're saying is so it makes sense. It just is more evidence as to how it was the CIA had JFK killed and the lengths that they went to.
But to me, it's like, I like to, as I was reading, so again, I've said this in the past episodes, but most of this is from the book, JFK and the Unspeakable, great book, and heavily sourced. Like, everything has footnotes telling you where they're getting it. But I like to play the game of, let's say I believe the official story.
Sure. What
would I need to believe to understand this situation here, or this witness here, or this one, And for this, okay, you let's say you want to believe that Oswald sent the letter, but he didn't mean any significant business. He just meant, I'm trying to get some papers in order or whatever. Well, then you have to ask yourself, why does the Warren Commission throw it out? Like, they throw it out. And actually, so I want to go through one more part of this, and then we can wrap it up and probably complete it next week or something. But this becomes a major problem. This is probably, of all the eyewitnesses that they want to throw out and ignore, this letter becomes the biggest problem for them, because it's not just an eyewitness saying, I saw a guy who looked like Oswald. This is a fucking handwritten note signed by Oswald that arrives at the type note that arrives days before the fucking assassination. How do you explain that? Like, you either have to blame the Soviet Union for the assassination of the president, or come up with some crazy theory as to what the fuck was going on here. And so they do. They work.
Of course they choose the crazy option. Of course they do.
They choose Operation Crazy.
Project Wingnut.
So here's Project Wingnut. They bring in Ruth Payne as a witness to the Warren Commission. Ruth Payne was she was basically CIA, we've got to assume. She became Oswald's benefactor in Dallas. She got him a job. He was hanging out in her house. She did all these things for him. She gets him the job at the book depository that oversees the route Kennedy will take at the turn that forces the motorcade to slow down to a crawling speed. So she helped him get that job. and helped him get to his boarding house. She testifies that she saw Oswald type the letter to the embassy at her house, and then she decided to grab the handwritten version that was his rough draft and keep it. Because what? So she has this quote unquote rough draft version of the handwritten of the typed letter that goes to the embassy that has some slight changes to it. In it, the rough draft, the phrase, "it's time to complete our business," is replaced with, "it's time to assist me and get the necessary documents I require." So basically, Oswald, we're supposed to believe Oswald hand wrote a version of this where he has the sentence, "Listen, Soviet embassy, it's time to assist me and help me get the documents I require." And then in the final version, switches that to, "it's time to complete our business." Why would you take out information for the final draft? It makes no sense. But they needed to create a version of this letter that didn't imply we're working with you to assassinate the president. So Ruth Paine brings this forward. By the way, there's other hilarious things about this note, such as the fact that from the rough draft, so Oswald was supposed to be a bad speller. In almost all of his notes, there's a lot of bad spelling. In the rough draft actually has fewer spelling errors, meaning he goes from the handwritten rough draft to the typed version and creates more spelling errors. Because that's what you do when you write a rough draft, you know? So, but anyway, so the Warren Commission then decides the rough draft is the official it will be the official version, will be the real version. And we're going to ignore the one sent to the embassy. And the final, like, icing on the cake is they give the version to that rough draft back to Ruth Paine after her testimony to disappear forever. This is evidence in the assassination of the president. They give it back to her and they're like, "Hey, you take that home. You do whatever you want with that."
I love the audacity. I gotta say, I love the just arrogant, like, change the letter. Yeah, but there's spelling errors. Who cares? Get her to do this. Get her to do that. Like, they just I mean, like, I don't know, like, it's on a much deeper scale than just some criminal that, like, you know, they run out of a bank with a bag of money and the cops arrest them like, "Oh, I didn't come out of that bank." And they're like, no, we saw you come out of that bank. This is a whole new level of insanity to just, like, and then all the money and time and effort put into this, write this letter, get another version, get rid of the original, throw that one away, say, get her to testify. Like, it's just at every turn, it's just cleaning up this mess.
Yeah.
They keep
cleaning up a massive mess.
Yeah. At every turn. And yeah, I don't know if they're so evil and sinister. I don't know why they don't just come out and just say, "We're in charge. We're evil and sinister. Do what we say." I don't know why they go through the theatrics of this. Like, well, we had a Warren Commission. It was official. It's done. Like, no, nobody believes you. Like, I don't get it, but I don't know.
I mean, yeah, it's truly fucking incredible. I'm sorry, folks. I know I said this to be a 3-part series. We'll have to conclude this next time because you know, we're getting to an epic episode here.
Lee Campser, how are you?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Oh, it's good. Welcome to
Government Secrets.
So let's wrap up the whole JFK assassination.
JFK wrap-up segment. Oswald did it, according to YouTube.
YouTube.
Done deal.
Disclaimer from YouTube. Oswald acted alone. He managed to shoot JFK from the front while behind him.
Jack Ruby was just a disgruntled American that loved his president.
So this one will be, I think, fairly short. I don't have that much left to give. I mean, there's tons of stuff in JFK and the Unspeakable that everybody should check out. But I kind of wanted to give, bigger issues or points so that people could look into the finer details. So for those who haven't listened to the first three segments, we went over the why JFK had to be assassinated according to the deep state, the CIA, those in our, ruling our empire who wanted to continue the Cold War and continue our wars in general in order to cement our empire. And JFK was getting in the way of that because he was having a change of mind in terms of these wars and in terms of Russia. So we went over that. We went over all the evidence that he was shot from the front and not the back, or at very least shot from both the front and the back. But seems likely it was perhaps just the front. And then last week we went into a bunch of things showing that there were almost definitely, multiple people calling themselves Oswald. At least one other that looked a lot like him and ran around saying, "Oh, I'm Lee Oswald, and I would like to blow up the FBI headquarters."
Right. I love Stalin and Bush. Right.
Man, this car I'm test driving sucks. I'm going to have to go to the Soviet Union to get a better vehicle of sorts. They have better stuff there, and I will have to go back there or kill a president.
I think you overcharged me for this loaf of bread, and I support the Communist Manifesto. My name is Lee Harvey Oswald. Hello, everybody at the Pay and Pack.
I know this is a weird thing to say at the dollar store, but I would like you all to know that this president needs to die.
Could I cash this check and have it converted to rubles because I support Marxism more and I hate and I want to kill American presidents? Can I get this changed at the bank here? My name's Lee Harvey Oswald. I'll show you identification. Here's my Russian passport. Does this help?
Here's my Russian passport. I always travel with this. Also, I need rubles and not dollars because this has a president on the front of it, and I hate that this dollar has that president on it, so I need to kill presidents.
Yeah. If you give me a dollar bill, I will have to kill presidents.
So, one more massive witness that really it pulls a lot of threads together, and it shows how the second Oswald, whoever this other CIA man was that was running around saying he's Oswald, how he and by the way, it seems likely, although there's not. The JFK and the Unspeakable doesn't go that deeply into the killing of the police officer, but it seems likely that this other guy killed the police officer. So for those who don't know, right after the JFK is shot, within an hour or two after JFK is shot, a police officer is killed by, quote unquote, by Oswald. And Oswald then runs into a movie theater where he's arrested. It seems likely that this other guy killed the police officer. And anyway, this witness, so U.S. Air Force Sergeant Robert Venson, he has a bizarre story. He's leaving, I guess, D.C. or something, and he goes to Andrews Air Force Base, and he is trying to hitch a ride to Denver. He wants to get home to Denver. And there's not a plane going there, but they tell him, well, if one comes in that's headed that way, you can hitch a ride. This probably was fairly common back then for Air Force people. And so he's waiting.
I will add this. That's still sort of common today in my experiences traveling as a comedian through the military. When I went to the Middle East, you could hitch a ride the way off-duty flight attendants and pilots can just sort of jump on planes, that happens all the time. I mean, that's like, and as comedians, we would be like, oh, this flight's full, but we check the manifest. There's a couple of seats on this flight, so we'll fly you to Kuwait, like that. So that still happens today. That's a common thing.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. And he, so they say if one comes in, we'll let you know. So they let him know. Oh, this plane came in. You can go jump on it and go to Denver. So he goes onto the plane. It's like a plane he's never seen. It's unlike any plane he's never seen before. It doesn't have any demarcations except just a globe on the rear tail that says that it's just an earth with lines around it. And now he finds out weeks later that that's the symbol for the CIA. So he gets on this plane. There's nobody on it except the pilots. They basically say nothing to him. He buckles himself in and they start flying. And somewhere over the Midwest, the pilot comes over and says at whatever time, I don't remember the time, but at whatever time the president was shot and killed. And with like no emotion and no like, let's talk about this or, oh shit. But so they just say that, he hears nothing more. They then, rather than going to Denver, they land along a riverbed. Like there's this floodplain area along the Trinity River in Dallas. And they land alongside this riverbed. It's now nighttime or dusk. And two men get on the plane. He doesn't recognize either of them. Two men get on the plane, glance at him, and then walk to the front area or whatever by the pilots and say nothing to him. They keep flying, and then the plane lands somewhere. These two men don't say another word, get off the plane and hustle off. He finds out later when he gets home to a television set, turns it on and everything, that this guy looks a lot like Oswald. And he's like, that's the fucking guy that was on the plane. Where they had landed, and the pilots get off too. So he's basically left seated on an empty plane. And he's like, what the fuck? So he gets off and he goes to, a small whatever that runs the tarmac there, small little building. And he talks to a police officer. He says, where am I? And he's at Roswell Air Force Base in New Mexico. So he then takes a bus. He eventually gets home to Denver. And he realizes what he's seen. That he's seen either Oswald or an Oswald lookalike basically escaping Dallas on a CIA flight. He realizes he's seen something that he should not have seen. And he also knows that because he had to sign his name on the docket when he was getting on the flight, that eventually they'll realize that he was on this flight. They'll realize what he saw. So he doesn't say anything. But he's soon thereafter offered a position with the CIA. And he says he's right then he was Air Force. And he says he doesn't want it. He wants to retire. But he doesn't tell anyone what he saw except his wife. Then they basically, a few weeks later, tell him he can't retire. He has to take this position with the CIA. So they basically force him. And they pay him heavily for both his Air Force job and his CIA job. And later he comes forward in 1993 and he reveals his story. And he says he understood, it was never discussed, but he understood what was going on. He was basically put into the CIA and paid well to remain quiet. It was just kind of understood. There was no reason for them to force him into this CIA job because he says he was not overly qualified. He never discussed interest in it. There was no reason for him to be basically forced into this job, except he knew the real reason. And so he never said a word until 93. He got a lot of money to, be CIA and everything. And then he comes forward in 93, and that's how we know his story. But it pulls together all the threads. How did this other Oswald get out of Dallas? Was this other Oswald CIA? A lot of threads come together. So,
yeah, it's really like that's the double Oswald thing is again another thing that's commonly sort of missed in the JFK conspiracy theories is and again, I mean, but this also, like you say, pulled together the threads of like Oswald himself saying, I'm a patsy, like I'm a patsy. Like this is insane. He was just watching movies and they, loosely constructed a kind of plausible timeline of Oswald left his place of living, shot this cop that ended up in the theater. Like it was really like, and
I mean, because he was clearly either CIA, Oswald himself was either CIA or a CIA informant or something. They, like I said in the last episode, they could move him around and tell him where to go. And so they had told him to go to DC, and he wrote to the Soviet embassy and said he was coming to DC. And then he didn't because they changed the plot to do it in Dallas. So he was then rerouted to Dallas. But it's almost definite that he wasn't given the reason for most of his moves. He was going where they were telling him to go. And the reason it's quite possible the reason they decided to use him as a patsy is because he was kind of going against his handling. He was not responding well to what he was involved in or to being involved in it or whatever. And here's another, stop me if I told this last time, but I'm almost certain I didn't. But here's the other ironclad proof that he was connected to the CIA is when he's in custody before he's killed, he insists on a phone call and he gives the number 834-7430 in North Carolina. And he asked the operator back then, right? You asked the operator to put you through. It's the operator at the police station. She is told not to put the call through. She's told to get rid of to tell him they couldn't get through or whatever and not put the call through. But she keeps a copy of the number. And later, through, I think, FOIA requests, investigators get a hold of the number Oswald tried to call. And they look into it. Who was at that number in North Carolina around that time? And it turns out it was a guy named John Hurt, who was U.S. Army counterintelligence special agent. And John Hurt denies, says he has no idea why Oswald would try to call him. But keep in mind, this guy is suspected of killing the president and has basically one call. So this call must have been fucking important to him. And he calls this counterintelligence guy. And
what if he was just calling his college roommate? Dude, you're not going to believe the day I'm having.
Man, flip on the news. This is wild.
I went to the movies and now they're trying to hang this around my neck. Oh my God. This is like that time we got busted for sneaking in the back a quarter beer night. I mean, this is nuts.
But so a former CIA officer who's well known as a former CIA whistleblower, basically whistleblower in that he came forward and has told how the CIA does what they do. His name's Victor Marchetti. And he's come forward about how the CIA works. And he says that it's very clear what Oswald was doing. Oswald was following standard CIA protocol, which is to call your case officer through a cutout. A cutout is someone who's a clean intermediary, has no connection to you, but in an emergency would know how to get a hold of your case officer. So this Marchetti says this pretty much proves Oswald was a CIA double agent. He had been spying on Soviets when he was there, when he was in the Soviet Union, and now he'd run afoul of the agency. And so he was trying to call his cutout so that he could say, look, I didn't do this, but I've been grabbed up in it. And he apparently had been burned. They weren't going to have anything to do with him. It's fairly clear they didn't even put through the call, that the police didn't even put through the call. But they were setting him up to be their patsy. So him getting a hold of his cutout wasn't going to change that. But that's another piece of ironclad proof that Oswald was connected to the CIA. So I'm just going to give one last thing and then we'll wrap it up. That's interesting that, which is that in these setups. They have multiple patsies. They have multiple, and I mentioned last time, they have multiple patsies, but you don't know the other ones because they never came into play. They were never useful. So the CIA set them up to be a patsy, but never used them. And I don't think I mentioned this in the last episode, but I think I hinted to it, was that 3 weeks before JFK is assassinated, an entirely different assassination plot was outed in Chicago against JFK that was almost identical to what ended up happening in Dallas. And so it seems pretty evident that it was like the CIA had multiple scenarios set up. And one was to take him out in Chicago. And they arrested an ex-military man named Thomas Arthur Valley, who would have probably been nailed as the patsy if it had happened in Chicago. Just like Oswald, he was given a job at a facility overlooking a hairpin turn on the president's supposed route, that would have happened if Kennedy had come to Chicago. Now, Kennedy canceled his trip to Chicago hours before it happened. So if he had come to Chicago, they already knew what the president's motorcade route would have been. And this guy, ex-military, was given this job a few weeks beforehand at this place overlooking the motorcade at a turn. And the reason the turn is important is because that's where the motorcade slows down to a speed where you could get a shot off. And so Valley, it's quite possible that if Kennedy had gone to Chicago, right now we'd be discussing Thomas Arthur Valley instead of Lee Harvey Oswald.
Wow. So was there a Thomas Arthur Valley just running around like Wisconsin going, I want to buy cheese for Stalin? Is that what happened? Like,
I don't know if anyone dug into it that much, but it's quite possible. Well, the other thing is that if there had been, you wouldn't ever find out because those witnesses wouldn't have no reason to come forward because Valley never killed anyone.
Right.
Like all these people came forward after they were like, that's the guy who fucking came in here yelling about the Soviet Union.
Right. I mean, God. Oh, and it's so, being that Google works with the CIA for data collection. We know this thanks to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. It makes these CIA long-standing operations, it makes you like proud to be an American, right? That they've just been single-handedly ruining everything for decades.
You said that with so much enthusiasm. It makes you proud to be an American. I guess.
Yes.
Guess that's what we get from that.
Yeah, it's my
Yeah, and I think what this does is, once you understand and accept that the CIA really did take out Kennedy, and that as the only trial ever held in MLK's assassination, we know that government agencies took out MLK. I mean, you really see what this was, and this was the empire's rulers deciding they needed war. They needed a Cold War. They needed to, quote unquote, defeat communism. They could not have different nations existing in different ways because they viewed it as an existential threat to their empire and to their profiting off really most of the world. And they viewed JFK and MLK as existential threats because they had the power, they had the people behind them, and they had, in MLK, in JFK's instance, changed his mind and became, anti-belligerent and not anti-capitalist, but at least willing to allow different systems around the world in order to allow for peace. MLK outwardly came out against capitalism and against the war in Vietnam, and they were too powerful and too much of a risk to these entities that ruled at that time. And really, that was a fork in the road for America. You know, I think that those entities in most ways still rule over our system.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you want to point to a time in history that had they not killed, and I would add to the mix Fred Hampton, having, studied him for this show, for my show, Political Vigilante, and we both know about Fred Hampton, and having watched most of the Netflix Judas and the Black Messiah, again, he was another guy that unified people. And anytime you unify people, you're a threat to the power structure. Anytime, and it's like, same thing with Bobby Kennedy, who would have taken what Jack was, Jack's sort of transformation. He was going to really take it to the next level. He would have got us out of Vietnam. I mean, it would have been, who knows what he would have done. And they just got to kill him. I mean, it's not a coincidence that Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission, and oh, hey, weird, he becomes vice president, and oh, hey, weird, he becomes president after Nixon's busted for Watergate. Like, well, again,
there is a crazy moment that you can find on YouTube of, and it's not like a smoking gun or anything, but it raises an eyebrow. It's George H.W. Bush, the older Bush, at Gerald Ford's funeral. Have you seen this?
No, but I know H.W. Bush has got a pretty sordid past himself in terms of being the head of the CIA, and might even have his fingers in the Kennedy assassination, but go ahead.
Right. And so he's at Gerald Ford's funeral, and during the eulogy decides to bring up that JFK was killed by a crazy lone gunman, and he smirks in a bizarre way. Like, he smirks as he says it, and then he says, "Thank goodness we had Gerald Ford on the Warren Commission to convince people that was the truth," basically. And you're kind of like, dude, not only did you say this in the weirdest way possible, but during this guy's eulogy? What in the fuck?
Yeah, it's pretty horrific. I mean, it's like they just did it in plain sight. And that eulogy is part of that. Like, not only do they do it in plain sight, but they did it just enough. I mean, as we've talked about in this series, this now 4-part series, that part of it was everybody went, well, God, if they can kill the president and get away with it, where am I? I'm not going to speak up, and that just keeps everybody quiet. Kind of back to the discussion of the top of the show of how Google knew demonetizing, 12 shows in 3 days or whatever happened 2 weeks ago we're all self-censoring a little bit. Everybody's a little worried. It's just like, and if people
before that, there was the 800 on one day.
Yeah.
I
mean, they've been doing this for a while. And if anybody gets too, they did like smaller and mid-level shows like mine. They didn't do any big 500,000 or more subscriber shows for now. But if anybody gets too bold, look, I mean, they could take out Jimmy. They could do anybody like that. They could do you. They could do. And it's like, if anybody thinks they can't come for you, you're wrong. And that's, again, why circumventing they have this infrastructure in place to divide us, to get us fighting with each other, to keep us afraid, which is why, I don't know, I'm such a huge advocate for like crypto and Rockfin and that thing Susie Dawson and Bill Binney are doing, Panquake.com, because this is the thing that they can't control. The internet was the last place where we could like really call out the powerful. They bought all the media, and the internet is the last place they can do that. The internet is the last place where we can bring up these facts and this history of the CIA's evil and people like George H.W. Bush, who is a maggot-ridden piece of shit that produced a bunch of soulless fuck children, soulless fiddlestick children.
Yeah, come on, man.
Yeah, my fault. And anyone at the CIA or NSA watching this, you're a soulless piece of shit who's going to rot in hell no matter how many shows you demonetize. Like, there is a lake of fire waiting for you, and the devil's going to skull fuck you for eternity. So I hope you're listening to the CIA. No matter what you do, you're going to get burned for 1,000 million years.
That's skull fudge you.
Skull fudge you. You're going to get skull fudged for eternity in a lake of popsicles. It really, these are awful, evil people. We are fighting the evil empire, and we need to pick up Emperor Palpatine and throw him into a big electric dishwasher or whatever that happened in Return of the Jedi. So that's, I think, the
conclusion of the JFK 4-episode arc.
I think we did it, and I think we solved most of America's problems. I think we solved the greatest of all murder mysteries, and that's important. I mean, and the other reason these things are important is because I feel like once people start to question, like once they see how much bullshit the official story of JFK is, they start going, what the fuck else are they lying to us about? So it helps. I know a lot of people who woke up because they found out about the MLK trial in 1999 that no one ever talks about.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, because it's not like the CIA went, wow, JFK was a one-off.
Let's never do that again. That was wild, right, folks?
That was too much work. We're just going to not meddle anymore. And we're just going to kind of make sure everything's safe. So it's like, if they can kill the president of the United States, they can do anything, and they're not the good guys. And we need to expose all of it anywhere that we possibly can. So yeah, it is kind of great. Because like I thought I knew, I'll be honest with you, I thought I knew a fair amount about the JFK assassination and the cover-up. But you going into that book, tell us the name of the book again.
JFK and the Unspeakable. I think it's really highly regarded as one of the best, because it's not just how well it's all put together, but it just has so many sources and footnotes if you want to do further reading and stuff. But no, I too I don't know. Until recently, I didn't look that much into the JFK assassination. I assumed there was some shit going down, but I didn't really look into it. So,
yeah, JFK and the NC is a very thick book. Although YouTube has a Oswald did it. It's like a leaflet, and they just give that. And anytime you buy that book, they just stick that on the front of it.
Yeah, it's just a couple of pages stapled together. Says Oswald did it. It's actually scratch and sniff, which I like. I like that part.
And they just staple it on the front of the book whenever you buy it, just like just so you know. You can read this long version of nonsense, or just scratch and sniff that Oswald did.
And you just scratch it. It smells like freedom. It smells like it's barbecue ribs and French fries.
Yep, in a beer can with an American eagle on it. That's made in China. So it's fantastic. So all right, buddy. Well, this is great. Well, this is Government Secrets. Where can people watch all your stuff that hasn't been demonetized yet?
I'm at rockfin.com/LeeCamp. I'm just shadow banned. I'm old school shadow banned. So shadow banned unite.
Yeah.
People haven't seen my Facebook page hasn't been seen by a living soul in, I'd say, 3-4 years. Rockfin.com/LeeCamp. I'm also, all my stuff's at LeeCamp.com. I have a TV show called Redacted Tonight. I have other podcasts and such, but just check out LeeCamp.com.
Yeah, folks, this is the comedy team of shadow banned and demonetized. I'll
be your since you're now the Batman vigilante. I'll be your sidekick, but I'm not wearing any little red underwear.
Oh, come on, buddy. That was kind of the whole point, is just to run around in red underwear. Go to GrahamElwood.com. Since I've been demonetized, YouTube basically was about 60% of my revenue. So if you can help me out I have a PayPal button at GrahamElwood.com. I have a Venmo, which is at Graham-Elwood. in the show notes of all my YouTube videos. I also have a Bitcoin and an Ethereum wallet. And again, really go to rockfin.com. That's how you can support everything that we're doing. And of course I have a Patreon and all that. So I'll still be posting on YouTube, but not as much videos on YouTube. I'm going to be posting everything on Rockfin. Since I have no faith that YouTube is going to bring me back, because even if they do, they're going to stick it to me again down the road or make me self-censor or whatever. So I'm just going to
try tweeting loving notes to them. I think
I love you, YouTube. So yeah, I'm going to just use YouTube as a promotional platform. Since I have 78,000 subscribers, I'm just going to promote it, use it to promote people to really go to Rockfin for the bulk of it. So if you're new to my show and you're watching on YouTube, jump over to Rockfin. But that's it. That's
Government Secrets, episode 29, the JFK saga conclusion.
All right, man. Good chatting, and I will see you in a week.
all right, buddy.